trabaho, naghahanap. Dumami rin ang mga may bahay na hindi naghahanap ng trabaho. Dumami rin yung matatanda na hindi naghahanap ng trabaho. But a huge portion of the 1.6 million people who are counted by government as being not in the labor force are actually discouraged workers and should be part of the unemployed. This statistical methodology effectively disguises the magnitude of the job crisis. So IBON estimates about 4 million unemployed Filipinos instead of the official reported 1.83 million. And of those reportedly employed, 7 to 8 out of 10 are informal workers. Those who are in precarious, low wage, no benefits, vulnerable employment. So what the economic managers are not saying and therefore not addressing is this. There is a worrisome trend of shrinking shares of manufacturing and agriculture of the GDP or of the economy. Manufacturing is just now 17.5% of GDP, which is the smallest in 75 years. This figure is the first to third quarters of 2023. Comparable yan. Agriculture is just 8.7% now of the GDP, which is the smallest in history. This unequivocally is a long-term trend of economic decline. The economic managers are also not talking about manufacturing losing 1.4 million jobs in November. So yung pinagmamalaki nila na, ang baba ng unemployment rate, lowest since 2005. They're not talking about jobs lost in manufacturing, 1.4 million. That is almost 1/3 of the sector's workforce. That is the worst contraction of manufacturing employment in 20 years. This alarmingly is a trend of deindustrialization. So yung jobs crisis, parang law of supply and demand yan. Eh, no? It becomes favorable for government to cheapen wages so that it can attract more foreign investments. So wages are low and remain short of what IBON computes as family living wages across regions, meager wage increases in the first 2 years of the Marcos Jr. administration have also failed to arrest the decline in the real value of nominal wages. And the Marcos Jr. is claiming credit for the slower inflation in December. Hindi nyo na kailangan ng aumento, bumagal naman na yung pagtaas ng presyo ng bilihin. Saying that government's measures in containing inflation have been effective. Although up to now, we're still looking. Ano ba yung measures na sinasabi? No? In reality, the average inflation rate of 2023 is 6%, which is the highest in 15 years. The rapid, tapos ito, ganito yan. Inflation, 6%. Pero sa mahirap, hindi po yan 6%. Inflation rate for the bottom 30% of the population is 6.7%, which is pushed by an 8.2% food inflation, which is largely rice price increase. So noong 2023, more burdensome sa mahirap, yung pagtaas ng presyo ng bigas. And this only shows the hollowness of the President's buzzword of food security, even as Bongbong Marcos sat as the Agriculture Secretary. Di ba optimistic ako? Fiscal consolidation. Yan yung mga fiscal consolidation, stay the course, on track, ano ba yung mga ano na gustong-gusto ng NEDA, is also exaggerated. The truth is, yung gross borrowings ng Marcos administration in the first 17 months in office ay triple dun sa gross borrowings ng Duterte administration in its first 17 months. The creditors and credit ratings agencies are just happy to note that the Marcos administration borrows in order to pay for its debt. Okay na yan, nangungutang naman siya para magbayad utang. And debt servicing reaches 2.3 trillion pesos, which is equivalent to 72% of gross borrowings. So, may mga ganun kayong kaibigan, di ba? Nangungutang para ipambayad niya ng utang doon sa isa niyo pang kaibigan. So, revenues, balik tayo sa revenues, syempre tataas yan. Kasi, Marcos administration has squeezed the poor and the middle class dry of consumption taxes habang nire-reduce ang corporate taxes, ang taxes sa mayaman, habang nire-refuse ang pagbubuwis sa super mayaman. And then it spends lavishly on infrastructure, which is insane because if you look at our experience, 2016 to 2019, yung mataas o yung huge infrastructure spending did not, actually failed to arrest a slowing economy and the erosion of agriculture and manufacturing. Paulit-ulit lang no, yung kanyang mantra or solution, pero hindi siya nakikinig sa kwento ng kasaysayan. How did the Marcos Jr. government moderate its deficit? By a standing policy of austerity. And technically in economics, austerity simply means you reduce the budget for social services and protection and emergency assistance for the impoverished citizens. Wala namang paghihigpit ng sinturon para sa korporasyon. Hindi po ganun yun. Ang austerity ay para sa atin. And the 2024 budget is 5.8 trillion, 16.6% is allotted for infrastructure, which, infrastructure ng communications, which is larger than the combined budget for health, housing, social security, social welfare, employment, and land distribution. Walang trabaho, may trabaho, trabahuan, diskarte, imbentong trabaho. Yung imbentong trabaho, siyempre maliit lang ang sweldo, minsan wala pang sweldo, bring your own salary. Ang daming tumawa dito. Okay lang yun, naman yan social cost. Tapos, bring your own salary. Pagpunta mo sa gobyerno, pwede po bang kasi baba lang sweldo ko. Wala ring panlipo ng serbisyong maaasahan. Ano po ang suma total nun? It's persistent poverty. And even that persistent and chronic poverty, katulad rin ng unemployment, is being disguised by a faulty statistical method. And here, I'm sure, you've already heard this from us, that the government is currently using an unbelievably low poverty threshold of 91 pesos per person per day. And if you have that, you are not poor. The Marcos Jr. administration even wrongly compares now, kasi bumaba yung incidence 16.4 na lang in the first semester of 2023. But comparing it with the first semester of 2020, lockdown year. Sabi namin, ungas ka pala sorry, hindi namin sinabi yun. hindi photoquote ni Sally yun. The reality is, if we compare the current figure with 2018, yun din yung latest, kasi every 3 years yan, poverty incidence is higher today by 500,000 families or 3 million Filipinos, a number that should even be higher if a realistic threshold is being used. Diba? Ang baba na ng pamantayan, ang taas pa rin ng paglaki ng kahirapan. Still, sabi ng Marcos Jr. administration, kaya natin yan by end of my term, officially. 2028, 9% na lang ang poverty incidence, and which is rather more insanely kasi wala naman siyang equally ambitious poverty program. And probably you've heard, kahapon, no, ni-release ng Social Weather Station yung kanyang self-rated poverty survey, which shows that 80% of families rate themselves poor and borderline poor, which is higher, gagayahin ko yung Marcos government, which is higher than the third quarter. Doon lang sa kabilang quarter, hinahambing. Okay, wag natin gayahin. The average self-rated poverty rate for 2023 is 79%, 3 percentage points higher than the rate in 2019. So walang pagtatalo. Lumala ang kahirapan. Itong survey na nga ito lang ay hindi siya naniniwala sa 16%. Sabi niya, 79 yan, which is closer to IBON's estimates. The Marcos Jr. government has an economic strategy. Of course, I was only being sarcastic kanina nung sinabi kong hinahanap namin kung ano yung, ano yung economic strategy niya. It does have an economic strategy, but it is wrong. So ang sabi niya, ito, mahaba to, comprehensive, all-inclusive, economic transformation. Tatlong adjective yan. A no-no in writing. Big words for small minds. I'm sorry. I'm nasty. It is premised on the bankrupt philosophy of neoliberalism that has been implemented on a large scale in the last 40 years. Market efficiency instead of strong state intervention has been the economic philosophy of the Philippine government, and the only one Bongbong Marcos knows, or at least is being advised to memorize. Predictably, isa-isahin natin, Marcos Jr.'s first order of the day is a program of austerity. And then, nag-certify siya na, certify urgent, mga bagong tax proposals for the poor, and then vehemently, agad-agad, no, on the first year, no, there's no such thing as a billionaire wealth tax. And then the administration also succeeded in amending the Public Service Act to allow 100% foreign ownership in constructing and operating airports, railways, expressways, and telecommunications. Without due process, it also announces to the world that the sector of renewable energy is open to 100% foreign ownership. The administration now is also implementing a new public-private partnership code that eases the process of approving unsolicited proposals and gives absolute power to the corporations. Unsolicited proposals, ang ibig sabihin niyan, mga infrastructure projects that are proposed, indecent proposals, by private corporations, even if these projects are not in the list of needs or priorities of government, like MRT 7. Diba? Di ba natin kailangan yun? Hindi naman nila nilista, hindi nga inaral kung kailangan. These also need not to go through the bidding process anymore. A National Land Use Act is also in the works, which reclassifies land use in the name of market orientation and allows reclassification of agricultural lands and protected areas in the name of land development. So mapapabilis nito yung land use conversion and land reclamation, which are necessary for the country's real estate oligarchs to expand their businesses and for the government to attract more foreign investments. Also under his watch, pinasa rin ang RCEP. I'm sorry kung parang nagugulat kayo na hindi nyo namalayan yun. Yung mga bagay-bagay. Or Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. This removes the remaining barriers to trade that the country has, all alarmingly, mostly agricultural tariffs. Ganun siya, no? And meanwhile, yung standing policy ng Marcos Jr. administration is importation. When prices increase, import tayo. When local supply decreases, import tayo. And it has totally given up supporting domestic production. And finally, which I will not elaborate, the Marcos Jr. government has forced the phase out of traditional jeepneys under the Public Utility Vehicle Modernization Program, which is basically corporatization of the last mile public transport at the expense of the livelihood of drivers and transport workers and at the expense of the welfare of millions of commuters. Yun yung kanyang so far economic strategy. Pero sa ilalim nun, as I said, is basically neoliberalism. For 40 years, the Philippine government has deified foreign direct investment and has used it as the framework of its development plans. When you hear the economic managers talk about strong economic fundamentals, nahilig talaga nila sa maraming adjective. They are basically saying that the Philippine economy has all the elements of being attractive to FDI. Ganun. Still have time, no, Sunny? I asked Sunny, I will learn on FDI, but anyway, FDI goes to trade, to export, import. It goes to manufacturing, mostly export manufacturing. It goes to the extraction of minerals and other natural resources. It goes to public services and utilities that otherwise should be state-owned but have already been privatized and commercialized. It goes to financial services for its own sake. It goes to owning land for all you know. It pairs with businesses of local economic oligarchs to scheme more super profits. For more than 40 years, FDI inflows and stock, and as part of the GDP, increased. But the economy did not grow as much. FDI went to manufacturing, but manufacturing bled. FDI did not create the promised jobs. The country lost its capacity to create jobs. FDI did not circulate in the economy long enough to create domestic resource capacity. It only gobbled up the small local capitalists. The Philippine economy is simply a service and trading economy now. Instead of a producing one, it is dominated by foreign and big local comprador business and is unable to produce for its own needs. 40 years, be. Negative balance of trade has only worsened and become chronic. Kasi yung exports manufacturing mo, kuno, o sige, mag-earn ka ng exports. Okay, saan natin kukunin yung components? Import. The country has simply become a location of foreign business. Lokasyon lang pala tayo, which is a provider of cheap infrastructure, pinipressure pa na dapat maganda, green and sustainable cities, and cheap labor, with scant technology, skills, and knowledge left for our own industrialization. And like crazy, the Philippine government, as part of its commitment to international trade deals, has liberalized importation. Hindi na lang ng components of food, agricultural, and other basic commodities. Bongbong Marcos said, may sinabi siya, that the greatness of an economy is measured by the amount of trade that passes through it. Galleon trade pa lang pala, great na tayo. No economy in the world has ever developed and industrialized with such philosophy alone. Each industrial and developed and progressive economy we know has increased production capacity first, to create as many products as it can for local needs, and then to expand this production and technological capacity to create more products for development. Hindi ako nag-Oxford. Instead, we are bleeding. Yun yung nangyari sa atin. And bankrupt. And we have to be sustained by borrowing in dollar, which, of course, comes with a conditionality. And the conditionality when you borrow is to continue neoliberalism, which in the first place has been the paradigm that has caused us to bleed. such a curse. Neoliberalism means the removal of import tariffs, reduction of corporate and foreign investment taxes, removal of government subsidies for domestic producers, and government stepping aside, boss, in behalf of the corporation. Madugo. Duduguin ka talaga doon. This is why neoliberalism, 3 pillars, liberalization, privatization, deregulation, has a 4th pillar, and that is fiscal management that is taxing the poor and scrimping on social services, protection, and welfare. The Marcos Jr.'s economic strategy is wrong, not only because it relies on a global economy that is in protracted stagnation, I will not go into that, and not only because the accustomed indicators to face the onslaught of FDI are weak, which I have already discussed. It is wrong because it results in a backward and foreign and oligarch-controlled economy. It is wrong because it profits foreign capitalists, foreign powers, international financial institutions, foreign creditors, local oligarchs, and commissioning government officials. And it creates a huge gap between the rich and the poor. Baka yung dulo na lang, it's enough evidence that this economic strategy is not just wrong, but a violation of human rights. When we look at the top 1,000 corporations, tumingin, wala na ba yun? Nawili. Yung kita ng top 1,000 corporations increased by 24% in 2022. If you look at the top 50, paliit ng paliit, 37% ang increase niya. Top 10 corporations in the Philippines, 49% ang in-increase ng kanilang gross revenues in 2022. Where were you then? Mahirap isipin at tanggapin na sa mga panahong yon, hindi man lang gumalaw ang inyong mga sahod. The net worth of the 50 richest Filipinos increased by 13.6%. The net worth of the 10 richest of them grew by 21.9%. In 2023, what were you doing back then? Last year lang. I'm sure you were going through shock therapy while prices were soaring and while you were paying for higher consumption taxes. Tapos tinitingnan nyo yung super rich, walang tax. Yung mga evasive, di ba? The country's economic oligarchs soared to new levels under Bongbong Marcos. The net worth of Manny Villar, the country's richest, at least based on recorded accounts of Forbes 500, increased by 9.2%. Enrique Razon Jr. increased by 14.8%. Ramon Ang increased by 79%. They are favored, yes, with infrastructure projects, and all the neoliberal policies rammed down our throats. But take note that they also hold 3 of the country's 5 largest political parties. And I stop here. Nagulat si Sani. Wait lang.
Thank you, Rose B. Now I want to know why she just stopped there. We'll know soon from our next speaker. So our next speaker, he finished his master's degree in development studies and bachelor's degree in philosophy and economics at the London School of Economics and Political Science. He is a member of the IBON Board of Trustees. So to talk about the political roots of the socioeconomic situation, which Ms. Roseby just discussed right now, as well as the direction of the Marcos administration, let's please give a warm welcome to... Announcement? Okay, so I would go ahead and introduce IBON Executive Director, Mr. Jose Enrique Sani Africa.
Gusto yan. Magpapatangkad ako eh. Kainis mo si Casey. Magandang hapon. Gusto ko ibalik. Casey threatened to turn the mic off kung masyado ako mahaba, so kailangan ko time ang sarili ko eh. Okay. Ayun, magandang hapon. Naka-agit yung presentation ni Rosby eh. I'm reminded nga by comment ng great philosopher, great political economist. The executive of the modern state is nothing but a committee for managing the common affairs of the whole bourgeoisie. Siyempre si Karl Marx, di ba? Communist Manifesto, so many hundreds of years ago. I think Rosby ended doon. Actually, natural segue doon sa presentation ko kasi the Philippine government clearly creature siya ng ruling elite, ruling class, oligarchs, bourgeoisie. You can find whatever thing you want to call it. And I want to start yung discussion ng political situation on that kasi that's where we think the big problem lies right now. Sorry, hindi ko makita yung timer ko eh. Sabihin mo na lang ako Casey. Si Carl kanina actually talked about si FR Carl talked about yung structural and institutional problems ng Philippines. I think that was a natural way na tuhugin yung economic and political situation kasi when si Rosby talked about yung nature of Philippine economic growth, jobless growth, worsening poverty, when she ended with yung increase in oligarch and corporate profits, minsan nakakalula na yung percentage figures. So very quickly, I noted para may quantification. Ang pinakita ni Rosby, yung trajectory. Na despite all the troubles in the world, despite all the paghihirap na ordinaryong Pilipino, percentage-wise, lumaki pa yung yaman nila. So I'm gonna add, nag-scribble ako to give some numbers doon. In terms of corporate profits, in 2023, ito pinaka-latest data na nakuha namin from the Philippine Stock Exchange, less than 300 corporations nag-increase ang profits nila, hindi lang revenues. Inawas ng expenditure, revenues increased to 889 billion pesos. That's less than 300 firms, pinagkati-hatian, 156 billion pesos. Yung 50 richest Filipinos, yung nabanggit ni Rosby na percentage increases, yung wealth nila, 50 Filipinos increased to 4.5 trillion pesos. Yung 10 richest Filipinos, talaga may inequity sa mundo. Even among the 50 richest, may inequity. Doon sa 50 richest na may 4.5 trillion, 50 yon, yung 10 pinakamayaman doon, may 3 trillion. So ano ba yun? 3 divided by 4.5. 3/4? Tama ba? 3/4 ng yaman ng top 50, nasa 10 lamang. At yung pinaka top of the list, yung top 3, 3 lang. May 1.2 trillion pesos in 2023. Yung 1.2 trillion pesos na yan, dapat magreklamo sila about yung inequality sa Pilipinas. Ay hindi, sila pala hindi dapat magreklamo. Yung the other 47 billionaires ang dapat magreklamo sa inequality. Kasi 3 billionaires cornered halos 30%, almost 1/3 of yung yaman ng 50 na yan. So matinding inequality even among the very richest. Kaya sa akin super important yung quote ni Karl Marx, ni Comrade Karl, about the government being the executive committee, the executive middle committee of the bourgeoisie. Clearly, hindi yun nahulog mula sa langit eh. I mean, that kind of wealth didn't just come from them passively running their business affairs. That wealth came from them actively being part of Philippine politics. At yun nga, I was talking to Rosby kanina, isang gusto namin ma-stress na point with this particular slide. Exciting ang Philippine politics, especially now, di ba? Ito man nakarang buwan, actually ito man nakarang taon. Spectacle talaga siya, especially when we're talking about who's going to be president, sino ba maging senador. All the rest, medyo nababore na tayo. Pero it's always a spectacle. Pero did you know, apart from merong consistency, continuity do sa neoliberal policies, did you know, actually, yung tatlong political parties ng literally the three richest Filipinos, they hold consistently to for many years now, at the very least 1/3, minsan 1/2 ng Senate, ng House of Representatives, and ng governorship. Medyo nag-dip ng konti. As of yung last count namin, these three political parties of the three biggest oligarchs, Nacionalista, NUP, NPC, they had 9 senators, which is 38% of the Senate. They had 126 representatives in Congress, in lower house. That's 40% of Congress, the lower house. And 31 of 82 governors, 38%. At yung striking dito, pinag-uusapan, the death of the party system, weak political parties. Well, I'm kind of not sure about that kasi habang, I even forget the president's party now kasi kagagawa lang naman niya yan for the elections, ito stable base siya ng Philippine politics na hindi coincidentally stable base ng Philippine economy. And I think yung where Rosby ended, this is actually how the Philippine government runs. It runs on the basis of yung pagpapayaman ng iilan. So the whole pattern of policies, kaya napansin nyo, whether return of democracy, populist demagoguery, or ngayon, kind of a little bit better na from the Duterte rule, ang isang consistent doon, tuloy-tuloy yung profits, tuloy-tuloy yung pag-increase ng wealth, tuloy-tuloy pag-concentrate in the hands of a few. And I want to stress that kasi yung spectacle ng political bickering, in a lot of ways, it distracts from yung pinaka-nature ng Philippine politics in terms of it being run by our economic elites using the resource authority of government, hindi para tulungan yung nakararami. Despite all the lip service, people-centered, development, ginagamit nila yan para sa sariling ganansya. And I think yung frustrating about yung glorification ng wealth, di ba? Sipag at tiyaga, ang galing-galing, they're giving so much back to the economy, to the country. I think we have to flag na that may not actually be the real character of their political elites. Oops, ito pala. Ngayon, talk a little bit about si Bongbong Marcos. Too many, I think, were too happy na hindi siya Duterte. Because clearly, Marcos Jr. isn't a Duterte. Ang problema, Marcos Jr. siya. So, is this particular president essentially, fundamentally different from the previous president? Iba yung manner, di ba? Mas magastos sa damit. Di ba? Mas magalang magsalita. Masaya. I mean, if you have all those billions, ako masaya din ako. Ganun karaming pera ko. It's very affable, it's very nice. But is he actually any different from not just President Duterte, but all the other presidents before us? So I had 4 main points as a segue to another major point. There are things about the current president and our current politics hindi actually nababago, despite appearances notwithstanding. And sabi nga ni Rosby, this government is all about appearances. It's all about disinformation, deception, propaganda, yung mga mahilig mag-Facebook, mag-Twitter, it's all about the projection. But 4 major points, I think, to define the character of this administration. Una, syempre, nasasama ni Rosby, unchanged talaga. That pro-market, pro-business, pro-capital, neoliberal economic policies, walang pagbabago. So in a lot of ways, kaya pinili yung particular people to head the team siguro was to give that sort of lack of controversy dun sa team. Diba? So, syempre, si Secretary Jokno, dati Secretary Jokno, long history of neolib, best person to put there. Pero mapapansin nyo, the economic team, despite all the spectacle na parang iba-iba yung style ng mga presidente, yung economic team always continuous. Pointing to, sino ba talaga yung real powers behind the government. So those unchanged neoliberal policies, lalong-lalo na definitely not pro-people, definitely not for agricultural development, definitely not for industrialization, definitely not for providing universal social services and social protection. Ginagawa lang yun kung may crisis para to arrest social unrest. No change doon. And para sa amin, of course, sa IBO, hindi lang yung bias. Yan ang nature ng Philippine state, yan ang nature ng Philippine economy, yan ang nature ng at sitwasyon ng ating bansa, ordinaryong Pilipino. So I think, just to stress that point. Pero second, yeah, he's not a populist demagogue. Hindi niya style, wala sa character niya. Pero he's not actually even a liberal performer. So at least si former President Noynoy Aquino, a little bit more ideological than his two successors. Ito walang pretensions at all for any sort of liberal reformism. He's not against political dynasties, not against certain political parties, nothing to talk about substantial electoral reforms. Yung buti pa nga yung kapatid niya, si Ate, nagpo-propose ng hybrid elections. No talk about independence of the judiciary. And why talk about it? Kaya nga na-dismiss yung mga ill-gotten wealth cases kasi hindi independent yung judiciary. Pati anti-corruption, including pork barrel politics, walang pretense. Hindi kaya parindigan yan. And of course, that's a problem then. And I think if President Marcos looks better than Duterte, it's only because Duterte looks so bad. But even for the in a way, not mababaw, but a little bit more palatable democratic reforms, this current administration can't even speak about that. Siguro alam niya may hangganan yung kanyang disinformation. And he's certainly not a nationalist. Maliban sa malayong rhetoric niya from yung tatay niya, he's not a nationalist even in terms of the West Philippine Sea. So marami natuwa sa kanya, unfortunately, maraming liberals natuwa na, oh my God, mag-reset tayo back to the US. Pero yun na nga, it's from one power to the other. So yung pattern ng behavior dyan, it looks nationalist kasi against China. Pero kung titingnan mo talaga, with all the maneuvering, all the embracing imperialist military aggression in the United States, using as a staging point, malayo siya from being a nationalist, even in that realm. Also added, I think, question mark ko na lang, potentially okay yung question about yung pag-resume ng peace talks, pero yun, mukhang may pagka-tenuous yata siya. Kasi after magsalita siya, yung National Security Advisor and Deputy, may ilang mga comments against it. So I think it remains to be seen. But that's one thread of possible liberalism na maaaring mapiga pa. Number 4, again, maraming numbers man to show this, but to be very clear, hindi nga siya, doesn't have the bluster of a populist demagogue. Pero in the end, the state, the Philippine government under the Marcos administration is still anti-democratic human rights violator. Wala nga yung ingay, wala yung against human rights, yung kinuwala dyan, patayin nyo, barilin sa pekpek, or wala siyang ganung statements. But all the numbers show, dumadami pa yung extrajudicial killings, labas pa dun sa drug killings, dumadami din. Dumadami pa rin yung pag-aresto, dumadami pa rin yung pang-harass, dumadami pa rin yung threats and EJ. And forced disappearances. So I think that's also important to put it out there kasi the president, unfortunately, is promoting himself as upholding human rights, which fits kanyang objective to rehabilitate the Marcos family name, but also gives some sort of support to the US agenda na maging aliado yung Pilipinas. Kasi hindi maganda sa kanila na human rights violator yung isang de-develop nila yung kino-consolidate nila sa close ally in the Philippines sa kanilang US-China na pag-aaway. I think, 4 main features characterizing but hindi talaga fundamentally iba si President Marcos. Iba in style, iba in manner, but fundamentally walang pagbabago from the previous president. Yung last point, I think, crystallizes lahat ng mga ito eh. Kung yung nature ng Philippine politics is we have, unfortunately, especially the highest reaches of government, if yung unfortunate character niya is it's very, very self-serving, it's all about power, unfortunately, kita natin ngayon sa maging tapok sa balita the last few days, yung overriding concern ng Philippine politicians is to stay in power, especially traditional political leaders. And right now, of course, yung dalawang main features ng Philippine politics is defined by the Marcos and Dutertes. Right now, the two most closest to the most powerful political dynasties in the country, sila yung nag-aaway for strategic control of the Philippine state. And right now, there's clearly 2 things na ginawa ni President Marcos na accelerate this 2023, pero arguably, pinaghahanda niya even as early as 2022. yung two-track approach na one is to erode yung political footing ng Dutertes, visibly starting yung pag-demote kay GMA twice until tinanggal finally from the House leadership, yung pagtanggal ng confidential funds ng kanyang anak. That's all about, syempre, taking away the political ground from underneath the Dutertes. Of course, ang pinaka-big news, syempre, is yung very likely, pagpasok ng ICC this year regarding that, which will, of course, ratchet up yung level of political fireworks in the coming year. At noticeable din, I think, as a sign of how nag-intensify yan, di ba nag-open yung taon, nag-press con pa si Pangulong Duterte, di ba? So yun ang sign na he was probably never inactive, pero the fact na he's becoming more visible sa Philippine politics right now, I think it shows yun ang trajectory ng tensions na among the ruling faction. Pero if that's one track, yung number 5, the second track, of course, is charter change. If one track is undermining yung political footing ng Duterte faction, the other track is taking away the opportunity for them to actually even try to grab power in 2024, in 2028. Ako magdadigress ng konti, I think, again, may bias ba yung IBON, pero until kahapon kasi nadidinig namin palagi yung argument na, oh my God, ang laki ng problema sa Pilipinas, diba? EDSA Puera, ang kailangan lang mag-open to foreign investment. So I want to make actually 4 short points lang may time pa naman, 4 short points lang regarding yung nonsense about yung economic provisions, changing economic provisions to cause Philippine development. Okay. Promise, 4 points lang to. Lots of slides, but this is to show lang na, may datos kami dito to prove it. But I won't go into all the mga details of that. First point, walang duda. Foreign investment does not mean development. It's neither necessary nor sufficient. Itong table na to, medyo nakakalula siya, but it's basically comparing yung Philippine experience with foreign investment with experience of South Korea, China, and Taiwan nung panahon ng pag-arangkada nila noong 1970s, 1980s. Ang simpleng sinasabi ng chart na to, I'm sorry, medyo malilit yung mga numbers. Ang sinasabi lang nito, at baka maraming magulat dito, did you know, measured as a share of GDP, para comparable kasi ibibigay sa economists na yan, alam mo ba, the Philippines right now and for many years has relatively more foreign investment than China, South Korea, and Taiwan nung panahon na economic takeoff nila. At hindi lang relatively larger, 5, sometimes 20 or 30 times more foreign investment now than South Korea, China, and Taiwan in the 1970s, 1980s. Ano yung takeaway dyan? One major takeaway, foreign investment has not helped the Philippines develop. Kasi kung mas marami tayong foreign investment now than these big powers nung they were taking off, we should be there right now. But we're clearly not, as in-articulate ng Andy Rosby. So one takeaway from that is, yung paglaki ng investment na yan didn't develop us. Other side of the coin, why did China, South Korea, and Taiwan, despite not having that much foreign investment, bakit sila umunlad? Kasi, na-raise naman ni Rosby, they focused on developing a domestic economy. They focused on developing domestic capacity in agriculture, step 1, pero steps 2 to 10, industrialization, yun ang ginawa nila. So yun ang missing element sa atin ngayon, at yun ang reason kung bakit hindi necessary or sufficient yung foreign investment. Next, the chart lang, the green, shows dumami talaga yung foreign investment sa Pilipinas. At yung nga, na-share, I think, 1+1 nyo lang, ano man nang nireklamo, oh my God, huling-huli yung Pilipinas foreign investment. That's beside the point. Dumagsa ang foreign investment sa Pilipinas. We have so much more foreign investment in absolute terms or in relative terms as share of GDP than in the 1980s. But despite all that foreign investment, we are where we are right now, as nakwento ni Rosby. Make one case study, one micro case study kami to stress that point. Yung kulay green is the amount of foreign investment going to manufacturing. Manufacturing is 100% open to foreign investment. Bumuhos ang manufacturing foreign investment over all the decades. But despite that, nasabi nga ni Rosby, bumagsak to record lows yung manufacturing in terms of output at share of GDP, and in terms of employment. So dun lamang, sa akin malaking bahagi na yon. Kung may magkasabi, open up, uunlad. Yung manufacturing nga, ilang dekada ng bukas, 100%, hindi pa rin umuunlad, paurong pa. So it actually, I think, will highlight even more problems. Yun ang case study number 1. Yung micro case study is yung experience natin with Intel, Hanjin, Malampaya. Sa mga nagmamonitor ng mga business news, ito palagi sinasabi, bring in billions of dollars in foreign investment, creating thousands of jobs, creating billions of exports. We're now a shipbuilding superpower. Walang problema, when Intel left after 35 years, when Hanjin left after 12 years, and Malampaya, pag nag-shutdown na siya in a couple of years, in the end, walang capacity in Pilipinas electronics at all, walang capacity shipbuilding, at nawalan din ng natural gas na binenta sa atin ng mga dayuhan. So yung natural gas natin. So anong point dyan? Foreign investment can help, but it has to be regulated para makatulong siya. Just giving it away, the economy away, won't actually do anything. Sobrang liit to, but just to highlight, so test what sabi ni Rosby kanina, majority of Philippine manufacturing isn't Filipino. Since the 1990s, up to 2/3 ng ng manufacturing natin was actually by foreigners based in the Philippines. Sinasabing Philippine manufacturing, pero hindi actually Philippine manufacturing. Point number 2 yon. Third point, Philippine development ay hindi nakasalalay sa pagbukas ng ekonomiya. All the more in current context. Palagi natin maririnig in the coming weeks kung pipitin ng charter change, which looks likely, sabihin nila, yung Pilipinas kailangan keep up to date with the evolving global conditions. Kailangan magbukas tayo or may iwan tayo ng mundo na nagbubukas. Kung may madinig kayong economic manager, academic, politician na rin, if you care about what politicians say, kung may madinig kayong sabihin yan, sabihin nyo, pakinggan mo sarili mo kasi nagbabago na talaga yung mundo. 1990s na linya yung nagbubukas ang buong mundo. Ang 2010 and 2020s na linya, nagsasara na yung mundo. Itong chart na to sa left shows trade protections since 2008. Yung kulay green na linya just basically says mas maraming protectionist measures kaysa liberalizing measures in the last decade. Yung chart sa right, cumulative siya, mas tampok yung point doon. More green than orange means more protection than liberalization in terms of trade. Next, kung yan sa trade, ito naman ay sa investment liberalization. Orange, general trend downwards, may up and down. Orange means liberalization, green means protection. Again, since 2008, ang trajectory, which matters a lot, is towards increasing protection but decreasing liberalization. Sa mga ayaw na mga charts, pero mahilig sa text, oops, not that. Yan. Sobrang simple lang. Sabi nga ni Rosby, nag-RCEP tayo last year, di ba? At ngayon gusto makipag-usap with new trade agreements with the European Union, also in Trans-Pacific Partnership. But did you know, in the last decade, over 60 governments unilaterally terminate ang kanilang mga, not unilaterally, initiate unilaterally or with consent ng mga international investment treaties nila. At amazing yan kasi, ibig sabihin, over 60 governments have realized kalokohan ng investment liberalization. At there are countries like, nakalisa dyan, India, Indonesia, Ecuador, Bolivia, and South Africa, they were terminating liberalization agreements with big powers, China, Germany, France, Italy, Spain. Bakit? Kasi dehado sila. Pagpasok ng 2008, sabi nila, oh my God, itong propaganda na 1980s, 1990s, 2000 globalization, what the F? Dehado tayo, lugi tayo, kumalas tayo dyan. I want to stress that point kasi kung sasabihin palagi, oh, we can't do anything kasi may commitments tayo. International trade agreements are agreements. It needs 2 parties or more to implement. Yung Philippines as a sovereign power can always say, hindi namin bet yan. And 60 countries have already backed out of, right now, over 400 agreements kasi it wasn't in their interest. Kung sinasabi na kailangan magbukas tayo to take advantage of global export, global investment. Again, the data says otherwise. chart on the left shows flat na ang global trade as a share of GDP since 2008-2009 because of increasing protections, because of the global economic crisis. Secondly, even investments globally, nag-flatten out na siya. Because of protection, because of regulations sa mga countries. So, yung pag-iisip ng maraming politicians argument, hindi na kailangan magbukas tayo para may ganansya tayo dyan, that's actually not happening. Fourth and last point, for the sake of argument, totoo ba na kung maging less restrictive tayo, dadagsang foreign investment? The bar here shows how restrictive a country's investment regime is. Yung kulay blue sa kanan, that's where the Philippines. Itong palaging sinasabi sa Kongreso, sa mga technocrats, the Philippines is one of the most restrictive foreign investment regimes in the world. Totoo yun. But napansin nyo, kung dapat yung mga dots is how much foreign investment comes in. Kung talagang pinsala ang restrictiveness sa foreign investment, dapat yung dots, ganoon din ang linya. The more restrictive, dapat pababa yung dots. The more liberal, yung sa kaliwa, dapat mas mataas yung dots. Matindi. Mapansin nyo, across, 102 countries, walang ganong pattern. It's not about restrictiveness. So even yung argument na, kailangan magbukas tayo, that's not actually going to happen. Ito, just to stress nga na may problema talaga tayo, but I think na-articulate ni Rosby, how to fix the problem isn't about opening up. How to fix the problem is fixing our policies. So kailangan ma-stress yun kasi nag-fail na yung so many efforts at charter change from the Ramos time through Arroyo, to Estrada, to Arroyo, even to Duterte. Nag-flounder sila ng lahat kasi alam yung agenda. Agenda was never about the economy, pero yun ang palaging bebenta nila. At ngayon, kung hirap na hirap na yung mga tao at idadanggal itong pagbabago, nandito yung susi sa pag-unlad nyo, delikado yon. So medyo we stress that point about the fourth slide, the last 4 points about hindi totoo yon kasi we have to debunk that argument. And the real agenda talaga, of course, is to stay in power. The economic decline, I think, will have to be fixed but not through changing the Constitution. Ngayon, siguro to wrap up lang, so anong more or less hinaharap natin sa 2024? May roughly 5 main points kami gusto ma-stress in terms of trying to frame lang how we think the dynamics will play out in 2024. Una, despite all the sunshine, the economy will slow down at making major effort ng administration to arrest that economic slowdown. Is it because concerned sila sa mamamayan? Actually, hindi. They're more concerned about the slowdown because it means lower profits for the bourgeoisie where they're managing the government for. So, totoo yun. But that's one big challenge sa kanila. They're going to try very hard to avert that certain economic slowdown from all the weaknesses coming to play from the unfavorable global conditions. I-effort talaga nila lagpasan yan, not for the people, but for their own narrow self-interest. Ganun pa man, because magre-resulta siya sa talagang for sure paglala ng kawalan ng trabaho, pagbagsak ng kita, kahit nag-sunshine sila, alam nila things are bad. At sa amin, nagkaroon kami ng 2 insights realizing na alam ng government that things are bad despite all the sunshine na we started out with. First insight, kung tingnan yung 2024 budget, they actually increased social assistance programs by 66 billion pesos. Tapos even yung final, I think nakita ko sa balita kahapon, yung final na issue na kaso about yung unprogrammed appropriations na 450 billion. Did you know, out of that 450 billion, 356 billion is for social assistance programs. So para sa amin, that's actually meaningful kasi taking a leaf from Duterte, if you can create jobs, mag-dispense ka ng ayuda kasi kailangan ng mga tao to maintain your popularity. The 2024 budget, hindi naman siya smoking gun, but it clearly shows the government knows things are getting worse. The government knows na habang nag-worsen ang political instability because of all the infighting, they know to avert unrest, they have to spend literally hundreds of billions of pesos to avert that unrest. So sa amin, that's in a way not positive, but it's an admission na alam na yung problema. But of course, problem yun kasi kung maraming talaga walang trabaho, kung marami talagang kulang ang kita, kung maraming hirap sa pagtaas ng presyo ng bilihin, because nga, nagsabi nga ni Rosby, yung isang pillar na neoliberalism, pagtitipid, magiging question dyan, saan siya kukuha ng ilalabas for that? Third, this is I think a very general point, pero I think important siya. Yung nature ng Philippine economy and economy, hindi siya basta sa mga bago eh. Kailangan medyo mag-invest ka, long-term review siya. Pero right now, dapat maging clear tayo. Ang biggest constraint to Philippine development is not the lack of foreign investment. Ang biggest constraint is this wrong thinking na itong obsolete, bankrupt, neoliberal framework will deliver any sort of progress for us. And the only reason pinapanindigan yan is because that's good for the corporate profits nga na and the oligarchs and foreign capital na nabanggit ni Rosby kanina. Fourth point, I think medyo spectacle. I think clear yan. I think very clearly na kapag hindi naman point of auditor, wala naman sa Philippine politics, pero clearly nag-intensify eh. Bumibuelo since the second half of the year yung pagmaneuver ng Marcoses against the Dutertes. Mahirap eh. Kung may gusto mag-fund ng IBON survey, tingnan natin ano bang pulso ng mga tao regarding the Marcos to Dutertes. Pero I think right now, it seems na hindi na ganun kalaki yung support for Duterte apart from yung core ng diehard supporters niya. Is that because the public is flippant? No, siguro reflection ng cynicism ng mga tao. Pero I think important yung klaseng political development kasi clearly magkakaroon ng political instability. So they never cared about the economy to begin with, and the economy in terms of the people. Pero the more they worry about who's going to take the midterm elections, anong positioning for 2028, magkakaroon pa ba na elections in this 2028? Clearly, ano yan, the Dutertes won't take it lightly even if right now, pinipress na Marcoses yung kanilang advantage. So, kung may mga initial jabs na sila, there's a very strong chance come this year, lalo kung ICC, yun na yung kumbaga attempt for knockout blow, I think, ng Marcos administration. So yung escalating tension na yan sa disunity team, I think it's going to be a key factor for 2024. Geopolitically, again, hindi nationalist naman just because you're anti-China. Tama naman to defend your territory. Pero at the same time na may instability tayo from this disunity team na tension, may tensions na rin sa West Philippine Sea, including actually sa North Asia, lalo na dun sa that whole stretch from the South China Sea, West Philippine Sea, all the way up to North Asia and involving Taiwan. So even yung mga pot shots ng US using bongbong na, congratulations Taiwanese president, hindi naman random eh. Ano yan, may pagka-testing the waters in actually na nagaganap doon. And the more those dynamics play out, of course, the more difficult it will be for the for this administration. Also remains to be seen, medyo unseen kasi yung mga ganito, to what extent is China backing yung the Dutertes, because clearly the US is backing the Marcoses, the Marcos Romualdez's. Ayun, I mean, last point of course, in the end, nakakadismaya palagi yung Philippine politics, lalo nakakadismaya yung state ng economy. Pero in the end naman, New Year, Yearstarter natin, always hopeful. In the end, as long as may pagtulak naman para sa pagbabago niyan, I mean, we all have confidence that pagbabago will happen in our favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunny. And thank you again, Roseby. So before we get to the next part of our program, which I know many of you are looking forward to, which is our open forum, and we'll have a little talk with our speakers and then open the floor to your questions and thoughts. I just wanted to acknowledge, again, our partners and as well as our cross-posting partners. So while I'm doing that, please take the time to think about your questions, formulate your thoughts, and in preparation for the open forum. So again, thank you again to our partners in terms of like co-presenting the IBON Birdtalk, which is Altermidya, All UP Academic Employees Union, and Office of the Faculty Region. And then we'd also like to show our gratitude also to our cross-posting partners who are Rappler, Philippine Collegian, Now You Know, Pinoy Media Center, Pinoy Weekly, Pitik Bulag, UP Office of the Student Regent, UP Diliman University Student Council, PUP Center for Inclusion and Diversity, PUP Economics Research Society, Para Advocates for Inclusive Transport, Philippine Miserior Partnership Incorporated, Bunyog Pagkakaisa Public Page, Human Rights and Employment Empowerment Center, AGHAM or Advocates of Science and Technology for the People, Inclusive Cities Advocacy Network or ICANN, Agroecology X, Community Pantry Philippines, Musica Publico, Living Laudato Si, Kodal Productions, Suki Network, and Council for People's Development and Governments. Let's give everyone a help us. Thank you again. And they're also cross-posting live, and they've also really promoted this event to have all of you here with us today. So, okay, so can I invite our two speakers to the couch? This very comfortable couch. Rose B and Sunny. Sunny, you have to like come back all the way down and come over here. Okay, we're having a little bit of technical issues right now. So, Sun, you can already come to the stage. Yes. And Rose B. Thank you. Round of applause again. What? I know why you went all the way around to the back. Just for that. Before you guys have... Wait, I have an extra one. Low. Okay, there you go. All right. So before we go to the open forum, let's just like have warm-up questions.
Audrey.
Yes, hi, Roseby. Let's stretching. Okay, Gabe. So in your discussions, you talked about the socioeconomic situation, political roots, prospects or the direction of the Marcos administration. So I think one of the things that, and I'm sure some of the audience too was like, whoa, regarding manufacturing, because for a time, or at least, the impression that's given from the government that, our manufacturing sector, if not soaring, is like relatively stable. So I guess to get into more detail, like we see the 1.4 million jobs lost in the sector, saying that its share of GDP is shrinking. In more detail, like what exactly, where were the jobs lost? And like you touched upon that there are global factors, like what are some of those?
Siyempre una, I didn't sense that the government was really hyping manufacturing at this point. But I do remember that the last time they hyped was under the Duterte administration. But anyway, when we look at the volume of production, kasi gano'n naman yun, jobs lost. And we know that manufacturing jobs are not really that permanent. Ang daming contractual yan because it's really seasonal. And export processing zones are really known for contractualized and even for retrenchments ng walang kaabog-abog. No warning, you're just being retrenched. But we looked at the volume of production and there is a slowdown in the volume of production of exports. So sabi namin, okay, so it's the global economy that has reduced its orders from the Philippines. It's also the global economy, as already discussed by Sunny, that global trade it's on a slowdown. Ano siya talaga medyo lukewarm yung global trade. And a country that only relies on exporting components or semi-processed materials or goods to other countries will get hurt. So I think yung sakit nung manufacturing in just the November jobs losses, ano yun it's a sign, telltale sign siya na yung buong reliance on exports and reliance on the global economy is really faulty. So ang nagsasuffer talaga is the worker. And the worker in this case, sige natanggal na yung kasama mo, di ba? Siyempre, di ka na makakahingi ng wage increase. di ba, lalo kang machichipen kasi lumaki yung unemployment. And that is not being talked about. Yun yung napansin ko rin dun sa ating economic managers. They're not talking about production volume. Not even in agriculture, which showed a very, very low growth rate, no? It's the lowest pa nga in the last, I think average, no? Annual average niya is just probably wala pa doon sa annual average of 2.4%. 1.1%, that's not even growth. It's not considered growth. Okay. Thank you.
Actually, it remains to be seen kung ano yung actual sectors na bumagsak, subsectors within manufacturing. In terms of yung output, basically marami din export-oriented. The electronics output went down, electronics, auto, heavy equipment, tapos yung chemical products. Marami din export-oriented. So, medyo important din to see once it's placed out kasi significant yung pagbagsak. As in, that 1/3 drop in employment in a year, unprecedented yan. Yung level ng manufacturing employment ngayon is the same level as it was 20 years ago. Kung nabura in a year, yung 20 years worth of job din sa manufacturing. Ngayon, important to see ano yung actual na mga nagsara na mga firms. Imposible man na puro layoffs lang yan eh. Kasi there are two kinds of firms. If they're mga small, semi-feudal Pinoy firms, baka madali mag-hire uli dyan. Kung mag-pick up yung economy, kung ilabas ng gobyerno yung kanilang hundreds of billions of pesos in ayuda, kung yung manufacturing jobs lost were in mga small-scale food manufacturing, yun, baka madali makabawi yun next year. Pero, kung proper factories ay umalis, pumunta sa ibang bansa, hindi basta-basta mababalik yung over 1 million jobs lost na yun eh. So, wala kaming idea right now exactly where those job losses were. Yung DOLE might have in a few months a bit more detail, but I think it's worth watching and kumbaga best case, worst case. Worst case, these are actual formal firms na nagsara na hindi madali buksan uli. Worst case. Best case, ito yung mga small na mga public na pwedeng, open, close, na may pagka mom and pop. But right now, hard to say. But whether best case or worst case, grabe talaga. I mean, serious problem yon and I think there's no way to downplay yung effects nun. Or baka statistical glitch. I don't know. Kaya, you think?
Last lang. Okay. We have time. There are corporations, manufacturing corporations kasi, they remain, these are the big names. But in the zone, they have subcontractors as well. And we don't know what's happening to them. So pag sabing, wala na, hindi na tayo order kay ganyan, which is part of the entire manufacturing, yung maliliit talaga yung nagsasara. But they are also foreign, like South Korean and Taiwanese corporations. Pero yung 1.4, tama si Sani, 1.4 million jobs lost. Bukol ang laki. So, parang hindi talaga siya dun sa mga maliliit lang na subcontractors.
We're seeing it also in the large foreign corporations or manufacturing outfits as well. And so that's interesting because like earlier was mentioned that the majority of foreign investments are going to the manufacturing sector. So does that mean and kind of mentioned in that it's not foreign investments that are necessarily the problem, but the policies or frameworks in terms of dealing with foreign investment. So are we saying that it doesn't mean all foreign investments are bad? And if not, how should foreign investments be used to benefit the country? Okay, sige.
Actually, always tanong yan sa amin eh. Are we saying foreign investment is bad? Siguro ang pinaka... Good mood ako ngayon kasi natapos na yung input ko eh. Nakaraos din. Siguro ang best way to formulate yung pagtingin sa foreign investment is foreign investment. Gusto niya kumita. So is it bad or good? ganun siya eh. It does what it does kasi yun ang nature niya. It just wants to make money from wherever in the world. It wants to make money from another country's cheap labor, from its cheap raw materials and inputs, or from being a market sa produkto niya. So sa akin, a mas bigger question, anong gagawin ng gobyerno to take advantage of yung nature ng foreign investment? And it's so straightforward eh. It's not about letting foreign investment in or not. Kasi bulag yun dun sa potential that can be had from foreign investment. Pero, if you want to get the potential for investment, kailangan siya puwersahin. So for foreign investment to be quote-unquote good and to contribute to Philippine technological progress, to developing a Filipino manufacturing base, to developing yung capacity natin to manage big firms, to give us access to export markets, to give us access to the whole world, kailangan of government policies to make foreign investment good. So sa akin, it's all about learning from decades of experience of other countries. Many other countries have benefited from foreign investment, hindi because binigay lahat just to let them in for the headline figures. They benefited kasi tightly regulated yung foreign investment. On the other hand, kung papapusukin mo lang yan, yung bad niya, ang tatampok talaga because kikita siya eh. Kikita siya from the incentives na binibigay, kikita from the cheap labor, kikita from wage repression, kikita from making sure na hindi siya inoobliga to develop future competitors. Ano yan? That's all the nature of foreign capital. So good or bad, I think it's up to the government to make sure na kung may papasok, it's going to be good. Kung hindi siya handa, if it's going to come in, it's going to be bad talaga.
Okay, thank you. Did you want?
I think the Malampaya is a good example eh. Yung it's a sector na okay, kailangan natin ng foreign investment. Kasi wala tayong ready eh, no? Even the technology. What was bad there, yung buong agreement that they entered into na parang halos walang royalties eh. Yung iniwan ng foreign investors sa natural gas natin. Tapos here comes the oligarch na na hanggang nung wala na yung natural gas, gusto pa niyang pagkakitaan, no? Kailan ba matatapos yun, Sani? So, yung ganon, no? Habang nagsasalita si Sani, inisip ko kasi we have to think yung parang yung ahead as a Filipino. Saan nga ba natin kakailangan ang dayuhang pamumuhunan? Kailangan natin eh. Kasi not all sectors kaya nating immobilize agad-agad yung domestic resources. And I think it boils down to what he is saying that, yeah, but we have to lay down the industrial policy, the national industrial policy. At mula doon, nandoon yung mga principles na paggamit ng financing, paggamit ng utang even, at yung direction ng mismong policy na yon for real industrialization or development for us. So, and that's to answer your question, no? It's not bad. No? It's actually the government that's bad.
Thank you. I agree. I agree now. So, I thought you were gonna high five me. I'm just kidding. Sorry, go ahead.
Siguro para mas concrete. Halimbawa, jeepney modernization. Yan na. May way to actually use the jeepney modernization program to develop Philippine industry. So kung napapanood nyo, the last couple of weeks, nagsasalita yung owner ng Francisco Motors. So bakit siya magandang sa akin? Another mini case study. Ito, realm of possibility lamang. How can a foreign investor help the Philippines develop an electronic vehicle industry or yung ancillary industries niya, battery, electronics, whatever? Simple lang. If Francisco Motors, which cannot make motors, kasi nawasak na natin eh. Any fledgling capacity ng 60s, nawasak na yan with the globalizationist art ni Tatay Marcos. Pero how can a foreign investor help the Philippines? Not Francisco Motors, baka naman hindi ko sila kilala, baka sabihin binibento ko sila. A local assembler of jeepneys can partner with, say, Honda or Hyundai or Ford, whoever. Sabihin, gawa tayo ng kotse. Pero, ang bentahe sa'yo, you're gonna sell stuff. You're gonna sell more engines, you're gonna sell more cars, more technology. Pero, in 5 years, 10 years time, part ng technology din dapat marunong na kami. Turuan nyo kami totoong technology transfer or technology theft, kung gusto mo yung type. Anyway, the local manufacturer pwede matuto how to make, not necessarily the whole engine in 3 years' time, maybe parts of it. Maybe the whole engine in 5 years, 10 years' time. So, yun ang quid pro quo eh. Papasok yung foreign investor, he just wants to make money. So, you guarantee it, profit. Sabihin mo, 200,000 units ang market natin dito, automatic. At doon lamang yan sa mga jeepney modernization. What more? The government, kung bibili na sa kanyang gobyerno for whatever purposes, kailangan from that same local manufacturer. So hindi lang 200,000 actually yung potential market. Baka 500,000 yan in the next few years. So may dadangle ka for the foreign investor to partner kasi may kita siya. Pero hindi mo bibigay lahat. Yung local manufacturer assembler will have to start learning how to make not just part of the engine, baka part of the batteries or whatever. Kasi you accumulate ganong class experience from practice. Ang problema kasi, hindi na unawaan ng mga neo-lib folks. It's not just about getting the cheapest car. It's about building the car to create jobs and create domestic productive capacity or knowledge to build more stuff in the future. Yun ang development, yung industrialization. Pero kung isipin mo, hindi, mas mura mag-import. Kasi nga, mas magaling sila. Well, una, apparently, hindi mas mura mag-import in the case of jeepney modernization. So I think, ang dami-dami pwede mag-build ng ecosystem for industrialization around jeepney modernization. Isa na yun, maybe 10% lang yung usapin ng pag-partner with foreign investment. Pero kung walang tanaw yung gobyerno, mas masaklaw beyond yung, having, good friends from Comet in the US kasi pinangako ni Bongbong bibili siya from there or si Duterte bibili from China. Kung ganun yung political leaders, economic managers mo, well, we'll have what Rosby showed nga is the worst manufacturing performance in 75 years.
Thank you, Sunny. Thank you, Rosby. So, I think we're ready for the open forum. Everybody else is ready. So before we go to our first question, I just wanted to share the guidelines for our open forum. You can share your questions by either writing these down on the bottom space of the program that you received, and you can just tear that off and give it to one of our staff members who's roving around. Casey, I believe, in black. Casey, can you wave your hand? There's Casey right there in black. And or if you prefer to not write, we have 2 mic stands available to the audience. You can line up on either mic on the other side of the room. Oh, wait. There's 1 stand mic and then there's 1 roving microphone. So you just raise your hand or call Casey and she'll also approach you. And those who choose to come up to the mic, but also you could write this down on your paper. Please state your name and your organization, and a gentle reminder that to keep your questions or your thoughts short so that we have enough time to get the, I said questions and answers, right? So, to keep them short and concise if possible so that we can answer as many questions as possible. So, and there are no more mic stands. Sorry, only Casey. Casey has a mic, okay. But I believe earlier, I wanted to reiterate again to say thank you again to our welcoming remark speakers, Professor Ian Fontanilla, who's the director of the Institute of Biology, UP Diliman, and of course again to Professor Carl Mark Ramota for the opening remarks from the UP Faculty Region. Thank you again, and thank you for being with us here today. So, we'd also like to recognize, we have our first question, I believe. We would like to recognize the presence of UP Student Regent Iya Trinidad. May we have a round of applause? Okay, thank you. Who's also here with us today. Thank you for being here. We have our first question. Could you please introduce yourself, your name and your organization?
So, hello. I'm Spencer Peñaflor. I come from the Children's Rehabilitation Center. So, I guess with the increasing tension between the largest political factions in the Philippines, is there any chance that that the people as a whole will also be caught up in the mess?
So how will the people be affected by the ongoing struggles between the factions? And if this worsens, what will that impact be?
Siguro to be clear, if you're talking about the factional squabbles, ano naman yun, main features of Philippine politics, yun nga yung nakakainis, no? They really don't care about how the policies they implement affect the people. Tapos, most of the time, let's say in the next 6 years of the presidency, they care more about how they hold on to power and how the factional split, how they should consolidate power. Kaya ang nangyayari, ang tanong, may ano bang effect nun sa atin? Initially, ang sagot, we're more neglected. Kasi hindi yung issues natin yung pinagtatalunan. But sometimes, yung issue natin, kunyari pagtatalunan, kasi yun yung bone of contention. To give you an example, yung foreign powers, for example, wala rin silang sige mag-away-away kayo dyan, di ba? Ganon yun, US, China. Sige, Marcos Duterte, magbangayan kayo dyan. Wala rin silang pakialam. But what is peculiar now is that even the conflict between US and China is a reflection also of loyalties of Marcos and Duterte. So mag-aaway sila ngayon. So gamit na gamit tayo kasi they ride on our sentiment, for example, against China, but actually, ang inaano lang naman nila is they're containing China's support to the Dutertes. So, ang isang example nito, halimbawa, yung reclamation projects na pinatigil niya lahat just because the US said that in Manila Bay, there may be Chinese investments that are threat to security. Di ba? At tapos, itong China tuloy, sige, ayoko na. Marami doon, Duterte, what do you call this? Pinasok ni Duterte. Siya ang nag-broker, no? At may mga pakinabang dyan, which of course, by speculation, wag nating pasukin. Pero makikita mo, tumitindi yung sarili nilang bangayan. Tumitindi rin na yung conflict ng foreign powers. So tayo na naman yung nandun nasa nag-uumpugang bato. So tayo parang, ang galing niya, environmentalist. Tinigil niya ang reclamation sa Manila Bay. Huwag kayong paloloko sa ganon kasi in the end, it's just about their squabbles and it's also just about the conflict between two foreign powers na may pakialam doon sa political factions in the Philippines. Ang epekto sa atin, I think maganda yung ending kanina no, sa input. Yung hindi nila kayang kontrolin is yung mismong mass movement that should point out na yung squabbles na yon or the conflict or even the imperialist rivalry ay dapat isa sa mga winawaksi natin through our struggles.
Do you have anything to add?
Cynical talaga, no? Higit 50 na kasi ako. I think yung squabbling per se, yung political tension, political conflict between those two factions, completely agree ako doon. Kung yun lang, actually, same lang. I mean, to be blunt about it, I don't think magkakaroon ng fundamental shift in the policies, the galaw ng administration, whoever of the Duterte or Marcos faction ay ascendant. Ang mas problema, I think, is kung yung attack na mag-shift yung constitution natin to something else, federal, parliamentary. Actually, ang three main general areas of change, looking at past charter change efforts, tatlo Economic privations, isa yun palagi. Secondly, yung form of government. Pero yung third, hindi masyado na pag-uusapan, pero meaningful, marami sa mga social justice provisions tatanggalin So bakit problema yon? Kasi kung yung domination ng ilang elite interest sa atin ngayon in the economy and the politics ay nagawa nila over the last 35 plus years since the 87 Constitution, given reasonably progressive provisions doon, because of a relatively strong progressive movement noong time na yon, may upsurge, imagine how much worse things would be kung those same self-interested political economic forces babaguhin sa ligang batas ngayon. At ang gagawin nila, lalong bubukas sa ekonomiya natin sa foreign capital, meaning lalong mawawalan tayo ng leverage to get benefits from foreign operations here. Secondly, federal parliamentary, gusto ba natin na wala ng control kahit every 3 years, 6 years in a very, wala akong polite term flawed election process? Gusto ba natin iiwan yan sa laro ng parliamentary horse trading nila na sila-sila lamang? And pag-iral ng mga dynasties and all their mga dirty tricks among themselves. At third, tatanggalin yung mga provision for a self-reliant, independent economy, na yung property as a social function, na dapat may family living wage. Tatanggalin yung mga yan, guaranteed, kung buksan yung saligang batas. They'll find some way to say na, kasi masyadong mahaba, i-clear natin, blah, blah, blah. Pero tatanggalin nila yan. So sa akin, yung squabbling per se, completely agree, nothing so much. Pero kung yung squabbling na yan, ang tunguhan ay babaguhin yung saligang batas, is going to be changed for the worse. Lahat ng worst aspects ng political economic system natin, magtitigas pa siya all the more. So para sa akin, yung problema ng kahirapan, problema ng pingatasado ng Pilipinas, problema ng dynastic, corrupt politics, yan ang i-enshrine in the new constitution. And I think dapat, very, very violently dapat oppose tayo to that particular process.
Thank you. So for our next question, again, please introduce yourself. Hello.
Good day po. I am John Paul Gabito from the Department of Political Economy in PUP. My question is, it's not about politics but economics. How can we, or what strategy can we use to increase domestic production without disrupting prices of local commodities and incurring external debt? And additional to that, in the advent of economic distress in the country due to the adoption of neoliberalism, what economic ideology should the government or we, the Philippines, adapt? Thank you.
Thank you.
Salamat po sa tanong. I mean, from the Department of Political Economy, you just dichotomize economic policy from, anyway, I think the word policy should also be treated like a political thing, no? That when you implement a policy, even if it's on the economy, it's really about politics. Yung unang tanong is, ano yung, anong industry? Hirap nung tanong ni Sir. Kaya, bumilib pa naman ako kasi walang Department of Political Economy sa UP. Baka sa UP Manila meron. Joke lang. Ang ano po kasi nung tanong syempre may pinagmumulan tayong context, no? If we increase domestic capacity, which means increasing domestic capacity in terms of production and looking after domestic consumption, ang isang sane talaga na first approach is you look at domestic resources. Siyempre, kung ano yung nariyan. Pero nung iniisip ko, hindi naman kasi bad na may corresponding increase in prices ang isang production. Hindi siya bad per se. Nagiging bad siya sa atin kasi from the resources to production to marketing is a monopoly. And the increase in prices in our context is always monopoly dictated. Okay, having said that, I think the best policy is to dismantle the monopolies from the production of resources to the production of next products. So from the primary economy hanggang makalikha tayo ng ating mga pangangailangan. Pag nagka-increase ba doon ng prices, is it harmful? I think dahil may policy na tayo ay magiging mas democratic doon sa ating production, from resources to products, kaakibat kasi noon ay merong nakabubuhay at disenteng sahod doon sa manggagawa na siyang lilikha ng mga pinag-uusapan natin. And I think kung meron noon, a slight price increase or inflation that comes with that pinag-isipang production won't hurt. So, iniisip ko siya, sir, kasi nung nataalala ko yung professor ko nung pag may sinabi akong mga big words, sasabihin niya, give me a measure. Di ba ganun naman sa economics? Give me a measure. Anong step? Anong hakbang? At minsan doon tayo nahihirapan kasi yung context natin, pilay na pilay talaga tayo. And we cannot think of a measure without going out of that context. So, sobra kong na-appreciate yung tanong. Kasi yung tanong is not just the economic policy, it's really the entire political will of a class ng isang uri that will no longer exploit another.
Thank you. Okay na? Sige. Did you want to add, Sunny?
May isa pang question.
Oh nga, like, what was your second question? Like you said, an alternative ideology?
You,
Comrade! Sa'yo yan.
my second question was, in the advent of economic distress in the country, due to the adoption of neoliberalism, what economic ideology should the government or the Philippines adapt?
Mag-add lang ako dun sa first. I think kailangan natin ma-appreciate. Lahat ng bagay may stages eh. So, to build productive capacity na hindi tumataas ang presyo ng bilihin, there are 3 things you have to accept. Una, kung walang capacity, it has to be built. Secondly, while it's being built, sa umpisa, mahal talaga yan because hindi pa tayo magaling. At third, habang tumatakbo yung panahon at dumadami yung na-accumulate ng practice sa improve yung productivity, mas marunong na kasi, knowledge, science, technology, at nag-expand yung market, mumura talaga siya. If you start from those three premises, it means, so paano mo rendahan yung pagtaas ng bilihin? Also, paano mo papabilisan yung pagmura ng pinoproduce mo? The government has to step in. At yun ang iron law of development yan. Hindi pwede anarchic, leave things to the market. The government has to step in to do so many things. Yan ang trabaho ng gobyerno. Neoliberalism has told us, ang trabaho ng gobyerno, step back, give it to private sector. Mali yun. Ang trabaho ng gobyerno, step forward, wield the private sector, eventually socialize everything to improve things for the better. So yun actually yung sagot ko na yun. This is the second point. Kasi, I'm in a medyo pragmatic mood ako ngayon. Although nag-start ako with Karl Marx, no? I'm in a pragmatic mood. Kung directions, walang duda. The world's history in the last 300, 400 years, the world's history in the last 30, 40 years of globalization, despite yung political setbacks in terms of the Soviet Union, socialism, leftist ideology, in-affirm niya eh. On a historical scale, nag-flatten out na, hindi lang ang trade and investment, nag-flatten out ng human progress. On a decades-long scale, crisis is worsening. So sa akin, that points to maraming core insights in the functioning of a capitalist economy from the Communist Manifesto I noted earlier, na not necessarily as is, things have changed in the past 100 years, pero pwede siya i-develop. So sa akin, categorically, unambiguously, free market, neoliberal, capitalist ideology, kung sabihin may ideology, panis na yan. It's intellectually, empirically bankrupt. Leftist ideology, progressive thinking, believing in the power of people to take control of their lives, believing in yung organizations natin being key to wielding political economic power, Sa akin, yun ang tamang direction eh. So whatever you call it, you know, leftism, Marxism, political economy, again, I'm in a pragmatic mode. Basta nandun yung pag-unawa ng poder ng mamamayan to take control of their lives, then create institutions, sabi ni FR Carl kanina, create the structures institutions to unleash people's potential, give them control. I think yun ang dapat ideology natin. Boundary natin. I mean, lahat man ng bagay, same way, hindi lang yung mga produkto may mga stages. Even yung pag-isip ideology, may stages siya. We learn from errors, we build on positive experiences, we sharpen, higher level of practice. So embrace that, I think.
Thank you. All right. So, thank you again for that wonderful question to our speaker. So, before we go to our live questions, we have a reaction from Rodolfo Ploponio of Jobs Incorporation to look for the increasing super profits of the 12 power generating corporations, SMC, Aboitiz, etc., in connivance with multinational corporations that control the whole power industry due to the IPIRA law. Also, the local rice cartel, usurer, trader, miller, has been replaced by a new importer cartel, controlled by the richest in the Philippines. So I believe this reaction is in regards to the oligarchs, yung monopoly control. So do you have a reaction to the reaction, or?
Ako mag-react ako sa reaction. Magaling talaga si Comrade Carl eh. Sa last Bird Talk, na-point out ng IBON, di ba very striking, Aboitiz Power controls the power bureaucracy right now. The DOE Secretary, the head of the chair of the ERC, the president of SALM, lahat sila mga former associates, former officials ng Aboitiz Power Corporation as director, chief legal counsel, vice president. So again, leftist ideology coming into play. Do any of us really think that the country's biggest, I think, power generator won't use their hold of the power bureaucracy and use their best buddies' control over the resource of government to enrich themselves? Rhetorical. Pero reaction sa reaction yon, actually grabe. And you know, all the signs are there, and there is a problem with the glorification of corporations. There is a problem with the glorification of wealth. There is a problem with the glorification ang galing-galing ng mga to. We have to step back from all of that. They have not delivered yung development na kinakailangan natin. May mga nakapagpayaman, pero mas marami na iiwan talaga. Kailangan mag-react yung grabe, naiinis ako.
What's your reaction, Rosby?
Eh, di ba nga nung privatize yung power, sabi natin, I don't, mother of all privatization. Because whoever holds it, all the other industries will have to be friends with me, di ba? Ganun siya kano. But I'd like to react to that, yung mga sinasabi po niyang mga corporations are already active now doon sa renewable energy. Na ano na sila, no? So, nag-shift. Sila rin. It's the same suspects, the usual suspects. Tapos pati dun sa electric battery, sa battery ng electric vehicles. Tapos sila rin yung Aboitiz also is nandun na sa importation ng electric vehicles and modern jeepneys. So, ganun naman yun eh. Ganun yung shift nila. And I'd also like to believe na pag nagkaroon din ng digitalization ng maraming like construction, like agriculture, mga ganyan, siyempre, nauna na rin sila. So, ganun talaga yung comrade. So it's powerful, no? More powerful than water, no? Than trade. So these are your oligarchs. Yung sa cartel, salamat po sa information, pero isa pang yan no? Hindi natin na-crack down. Ang kasi, ang sarado ng information. And this is food. But we are not surprised kasi yung food TNCs and corporations are also here in the Philippines. So hindi mo na kailangan hanapin pa sa Binondo yung mga cartel. I mean, just look at how the transnational corporations control even the most basic commodity like food.
Thank you. So we are now going to a floor question. Who will be our next?
Yes,
Please introduce yourself.
yes.
Okay,
Magandang
thank you.
hapon sa ating lahat, sa ating speaker, Sir Sunny, Ma'am Rosie. Ako si Annie Baldia, taga Mascom, chairperson ng UP Workers Alliance. Okay, napapanong ito dahil napapanong sayaw. Sir, from your nais namin marinig, no, yung perspective niyo dito, anong magiging epekto ng isinsulong na charter change on econ provision only, no, sabi nila, ng mga mamabatas. No, dapat dati sa Kongreso, sa Senado, pero ngayon baliktad na, no, Senado na ang nag-initiate. No. Makakatulong ba ito talaga sa bansa natin? Nakaka-PI kasi eh. Are we affirming this political move? Parang pare-pareho ng kanta. Persuade to invest foreign corporations in our country. Yun po.
Thank you. Yung microphone mo.
Well, yun nga, three major points. Hindi totoo na econ provisions lang. Tactical lang yan to divert from yung totoong agenda na mag-shift to a political system, have transitory provisions na a Marcos Romualdez family member ally ay pupwesto, hindi si Sara Duterte or a Duterte ally. So point number one, it's not about economic provisions. Point number two, yung charter natin as it is right now, ang problema sa development ay hindi yung kasalukuyan charter. Ang problema, hindi ginagamit yung charter. Ang daming magandang provisions actually in charter from a narrow nationalist bourgeois perspective. Yung self-reliant independent economy, yung family living wage na banggit na, ownership of property bears with the social obligation, at iba pa. Tulad ng, unfortunately, tulad ng anti-dynasty law, walang implementing na batas. Pero solid legal basis yon. So, second point doon, yung kinakailangan natin na pag-unlad, pwede na siya, hindi lang pwede. Paborable yung kasalukuyan sa ligang batas para sa pag-unlad na yan. And on the contrary, kung babaguhin yan, lalong kikipot yung policy opportunities natin para doon. Third point, ano epekto ng charter change? I think yung political impact niya, hindi dapat i-underestimate eh. Kasi yung charter, ano yan? Living social document yan. Produkto siya ng social forces at the time. Fortunately, nung 86-87, medyo on the offensive yung progressive forces. Napabagsak yung diktadura, medyo strong yung forceful democracy. Of course, coming from that period na very strong yung leftist progressive forces, maraming napasok na relatively favorable provisions doon. Are we there right now? Hindi eh. If anything, yung milyon natin ngayon, lalong tumigas yung hawak ng iilan sa ekonomiya natin. Hindi lang local capitalist oligarchs, even foreign capitalists. Mas malaki din yung share ng foreign capitalist economy ngayon than in country's entire history. Economic forces, yan ang dominant ascendant ngayon. Ikalawa, dynasties, they've worsened. Dynasties, all the unfavorable aspects ng political system natin, nag-congeal siya, lumala siya in the last decades. So, with those economic forces, adverse economic forces, political forces right now, unfortunately, dominant sa lipunan ngayon, yung gagawing dokumento, ano yung magkaka-epiphany? Pag nag-con-as, bigla na lang ang babait na nabahat, biglang progress. Hindi eh. Yung social forces in play will craft a constitution to their benefit. So basically, a step backwards, major steps backward economically, politically. Practically, papatagasin natin yung hawak ng dynasts, corrupt politicians, oligarchs over yung ekonomiya natin, yung bansa natin, at lalong madidisempower yung ordinaryong Pilipino, mga organisasyon natin. So categorically, grabe at all levels, as a living, breathing document, yung vampira na kinokontrol ngayon, ang magre-result ng saligang batas na pang-vampira lang din.
Okay, alam mo ba, Sani, the Philippine Constitution is the only constitution in the world with the word love. And look, we don't have it. Joke lang. Check mo. Check mo. Kung hindi, naku, na-revise yun, di natin namalayan. No, I was just thinking habang nagla-learn tayo. Look at nuclear. O, di ba, anti-no-nukes yung consti, pero recently, di ba, inisplok ni ate na may dinalang fuel sa Subic. Di ba? At yun, nuclear carrying fleet from the US. So, may pagka plastic talaga yung 1987. But it doesn't mean na changing it will, yun nga, parang dramatically will change what we are going through. Tapos, ang mangyayari pa, mawawala yung mga kahit words na lang na nandun, like living wage, like civil and political rights, etc., etc. But we talked about the Public Service Amendment to the Public Service Act. Nag 100%, di ba? Even without constitutional changes. Ganun yun. So inisip ko, ano pa ba yung mga gusto ng Econ Chacha? Pwede nang pumasok ang 100% Disney sa news coverage. Di ba? Mass media and advertising now will be 100% foreign ownership. So yung reportage, yung truth-telling, pwede na yan sa dayuhan. Hindi na yung mga, meron pa kayong mga pinag-aaway-away na mga networks na yan. So, pwede na. So, naisip ko, meron pang interest talaga si US doon sa pagbubukas through economic chacha. But the thing is, yung mismong nasa poder, ang concern niya talaga, pakinya, no? Doon sa, sa economic development by changing the constitution. Talagang ang gusto niya is to hold on to power. Kaya naalala ko merong isang bata in high school sa isang forum, sabi niya, Ma'am, bakit wala silang pakialam sa neoliberalism, sa sobrang epekto na nito? Ay, oo, kasi nakaupo lang sila doon. Ang pakialam nila is to remain there. And that is, every time, going back to the issue on squabbles, every time, yun lang yung talagang pakialam nila. And to please also, yung kanilang, yung mga patron nila, syempre, yung mga foreign support nila, and the oligarchs. So, happy. Dapat happy lang. Ngayon, yung ibang paksyon, yun yung kanilang aawayin.
Okay, thank you. So now we have a written question from Trish of Gabriela. Women make up a large portion of informal workers. What urgent steps can the Marcos administration take to address the growing informal sector? Okay, sector. Thank you, Trish, ng Gab.
Sige. Sa huling kwenta nga ng IBON, about 70% ng employed ay nasa informal sector. About 40 to 45% ay yung visibly informal, self-employed, family farm business, mga kasambahay. Yung balanse ay sahuran pero nasa mga informal establishments beyond the DOLE. So walang minimum wage, walang benefits, etc. Yung pinaka problema siya sa informal sector, kaya lumobo yan, kasi walang mapasok na trabaho yung mga Pilipino. Kaya nag-informal sector na lang. So tama yung tanong, yung general direction dapat, strengthen domestic agriculture, domestic industry, hindi lang to produce products, kundi to produce jobs para ma-formalize. At ibig sabihin, hindi dapat informal manufacturing, informal agriculture dapat towards that. Pero, ano yung urgent na pwede gawin? Sa amin, may 3 major urgent things na pwede gawin. Yung una, unpopular sa maraming middle class, pero I think kailangan talaga, yung social assistance. Kasi habang bagsak ang kita, walang trabaho, magmamalang pressure ng bilihin, yung ayuda, kailangan talaga siya . Ang trade-off mo dyan, kung di mo bibigyan ng ayuda, kahit may political motives yan, ang trade-off ay, yun na kailangan ng tulong, walang tulong. Magugutom, mahirapan. So, sa amin urgent talaga yung question ng ayuda. Pero secondly, pwede gawin mas bold yung government eh. Pwede siya mag-create ng trabaho. Pwede mag-legislate ng right to work. Pwede sabihin na yung gobyerno, from a billionaire wealth tax or from taxing the rich, dapat mag-create ng public works program. Dapat dapat mag-guarantee na every Filipino, at least in a 6-month period, may 3 months ang trabaho kahit at minimum wage lamang, etc. etc. And it's not as if ang konti ng trabaho ng gobyerno. Maraming trabaho ng gobyerno kung gugustuhin niya. At ang pwede niya kayang trabaho, whether it's na mga, hindi lang street sweeping. It could be, local small-scale community infrastructure. It could be also expanding the health system, expanding the education system, building housing. Lahat yan, kailangan ng warm bodies. Kung sa balangkas ng right to work, hindi to tatapok lang ng pera para kung wari may trabaho, kundi may produkto siya na kinakailangan. So second point na dapat urgent gawin doon ay yung pag-guarantee ng trabaho. From the government providing the socioeconomic services, it should be providing talaga. Yung third, of course, may hangganan yung dalawang yun eh. May hangganan kasi yung cash assistance or yung guaranteed work, cash out sa gobyerno yan. Of course, hindi naman pwede forever ganon. Kahit na may pakinabang doon in terms of welfare, in terms of yung more social economic services. Yung third talaga urgent, iwas to yung pag-isip sa ekonomiya. Huwag lang mag-focus on foreign investment at all costs. Huwag lang mag-focus on importing stuff. Yung nabanggit ni Rosby. Kaya talaga reorient ekonomiya sa tamang direksyon. At urgent yun kasi kahit gawin mo yung first two things na yun, hindi mo ginagawa yung ikatlo, actually, hindi nasagot kanina, lalaki at lalaki na yung utang doon, eventually, drain talaga yon. May benefits, pero kailangan yung third na yon para yung long-term na interest ng informal workers, aka yung mga dumidiskarte lamang, ay maharap siya.
Shorter daw, ang daming tanong. Marami pong tanong, short answer lang. Pwede kong dagdagan?
In 2 sentences.
Siguro aralin din natin yung wage subsidy sa mga MSMEs, which again places the responsibility on government. Yun muna. Short. Aralin nyo.
Short what's it? I-google nyo.
Hindi nag-google yun. Pinaglalaban ng manggagawa yun. Buhay kamatayan. So, aralin.
Sige po. So we have 2 questions from the floor. Who will be our first question?
Good afternoon po, Sir Sonny, Ma'am Rosario, Ma'am Audrey. I'm Carl Daniel Aviñante po from Polytechnic University of the Philippines, political economy din po. So my question po is, with the current state of the Philippine economy in the modern day, with the overwhelming debts and underdeveloped sectors, along with the growing tension in the West Philippine Sea, do you think we as a nation can stand alone in reinvigorating our economy? If not, how can we do it with the growing presence of foreign powers?
Just do it.
But that's very short.
You're so corporate.
Una, it's not about standing alone eh. It's about embracing yung sovereignty natin. Sovereignty means having control over what happens in our territory. It means regulating hindi lang who comes in, who goes out. It means regulating yung behavior ng nasa bansa natin. So sa akin, to be clear, it's not about closing off the economy. It's about standing up, asserting our sovereignty, dealing with other countries, foreign investors even, to the country's favor. At orientational point yon. Yung dekada na sinusuko natin, yung ekonomiya natin to foreign capital because we want the headline figures, tapos na yon. So I think, just do it talaga. I think just stand up, just do it. Not do it alone, pero assert our own rights as a sovereign power.
Yes, huwag kang matakot. Maiksi daw eh. Maiksi.
Straight to the point.
Hindi kasi may pagka-Stockholm syndrome din minsan yung isang bansa. Ang tagal mo ng, di ba, captive ng foreign power, malakolonya. Wala kang ibang alam eh. Yung mga Gen Z nga, kaming mga Gen Z ngayon. Yung, akala namin, okay lang yung privatized yung water services. Nagbabayad sa Manila Water. Yung ganun. Yung hindi na natin nakalimutan ng maraming henerasyon pagkatapos namin. Naks! Biglang tumanda. Kayo, kalimutan nyo na. Yung karapatan. And I think sovereignty, national sovereignty, is the whole gamut of community and people's rights. That you assert, you cannot have it if you will not fight for it. Kaya ko sinabing, huwag kang matakot.
Hello?
Another question from the floor.
Hello. Hi po, Michelle Cadiz from Youth Advocates for Climate Action Philippines. So I'd like to ask that with the present-day climate crisis requiring degrowth in certain sectors or industries and rapid growth in others like agriculture and public services, how would or could this be possible in the Philippine framework in a way that is just and fair sa lahat po?
Can I answer that in principle?
Short lang.
Okay, I think the idea of degrowth, coming from the French, from Europe, is to parang i-delink natin yung concept. Kaya I said, can I just answer it conceptually, no? To delink ourselves from the concept that growth is our obsession. That we look at the GDP and, 5.9%, third quarter. So, ang degrowth means, huwag ka dyan tumingin. Kahit 1.1% lang yung growth rate mo, kung na-preserve mo naman yung integrity ng ecology mo, at kung nabuhay mo naman yung magsasaka na siyang nagtanim, nung kumain naman siya, at napababa mo yung kahirapan, that is the principle of degrowth. So I think that the question assumes that degrowth means we will not produce. I mean, sorry if I'm just a sumera, although I'm not from Assumption. Diba? But degrowth as a principle in the climate crisis is telling us that stop, don't use the neoliberal paradigm that growth means development. Or the GDP is in the throne of i-dethrone natin ang GDP. Kasi kita nyo naman, Philippine GDP is just about the oligarchs' wealth. It's just about trade, kung paano sila nagpasahan ng mga tubo nila at paano rin sila tumubo sa public utilities and infrastructure. So, if you're looking at the environmental or a sustainable development perspective, yung totoo yung Marxist na sustainable development, hindi yung UN, kung yun yung tinitingnan natin, we don't care about how much we grow. Ang mahalaga sa atin, may magkakaroon tayo ng ibang mga indicators like, kumain na ba lahat? Sumweldo na ba lahat? May RNR na ba lahat? Di ba? Naka-eskwela na ba lahat? Okay, climate change na guys. Takbo! Hindi, joke. Kasi, yung climate change or whatever, anthropomorphic nga anthropogenic So it depends on the people kung paano nila gagawin yung production nila. That is going to be genuinely sustainable. Sorry na pahaba.
Sinasabi niyo
Kailangan ko mag-react talaga. Naiinis ako sa
Wag mahaba.
degrowth. I'm so sorry. I don't like degrowth kasi it blames growth for the problem. May kernel of truth siya. Yung growth, resource intensity, hindi na kinabing yung marami, tama yon. But I have a problem with targeting degrowth as the solution. Gusto ko i-stress, mas taming sinabi ni Rosby. Let's do what we need to do. If it means that we're growing, in all likelihood, we have to grow. Kasi we're coming from behind So targeting growth as if it's something that is the target. Growth is not the target. Development is a target. May problema nga doon sa pag-isip ngayon na growth, need, etc. Pero isa example ko dyan. GDP modernization high in my mind. Mag-grow yung ekonomiya kung magbenta na sa maraming kotse, gumawa na sa maraming kalsada. economy will grow, but it's bad for the environment, it's bad kasi in terms of not denying public transport, etc. Pero magkaka-growth doon. So tama kung yung point ay hindi dapat mag-grow yung sector na yun. Tama. Pero ibig sabihin ba, sasakalin mo yung auto sector just because you want to degrow? Hindi eh. Ang gagawin mo, you build a public transport system. Para yung mga tao, hindi nabibili ng kotse. So dun sa plus-minus doon, malamang kaysa hindi, an expansive public transport system will be less growth-inducing than the auto transport system. Pero ang ginawa mo ba to begin with, nag-target ka, I'll degrow this and grow that? Hindi eh. Nag-target ka, you want a public transport system, and then the growth will be there or not be there. I think, yun lang marami na ako nakusap actually sa Western European countries, sa Scandinavian countries. They like the degrowth kasi they're coming from a position of prosperity eh. Nakita nila yung resource intensity ng growth nila, talagang glaring talaga. So I think medyo to put into context, I agree with the spirit of it sana. I think it's misinterpreted even in their context, although it has a bit more truth there. But I think growth or no growth as a target is not good for neoliberal economics. It's also not good for the alternative economics, leftist, whatever you want. Growth is not the target. It's the development is the target.
Isa pa pala yun.
Buka mo na.
Hindi.
Be brief.
Next question. Hindi naman insulto. Nasabihin mo yun sa Philippines na semi-feudal country. Ayun o, question.
Basahin ko na. So, pasok tayo. Written question from Eman Penuliar, Department of Political Economy, PUP. Can we consider Philippines as a semi-feudal country, or it is leaning towards bureaucratic corporatism, or something else? Something else.
Quick
Moda ng
answer.
production yan, di ba? Ay, sorry. Hindi kasi,
Ako, I think it's whatever label we give, it all depends ano yung criteria for that. I think we're semi-feudal in the sense na we're definitely not capitalist. Ang lawak-lawak ng informality natin eh. Informality also means yung generation ng product ay mababa. Also means yung distribution ay may pagka-arbitrary nature depending on yung weight, political power, economic power ng nag-distribute ng product. So, yung informality natin, the widespread informality, industrial backwardness natin, despite yung prosperity in a few capitalist islands sa atin, I think, kung yun ang criteria natin in terms of yung backwardness ng production system, how that surplus is produced, in particular, not being an industrialized country, not having the formality associated with industrial production, even more formal service production, categorically, semi-feudal tayo. It also depends, how do we define bureaucratic corporatism? Kasi if you're referring to different metrics, the labels might not fit eh. We might be both. But it depends how you define ano yung bureaucratic corporatism. If it refers to yung control ng iilan dun sa Philippine state, definitely may bureaucratic corporatism. We're both semi-feudal and bureaucratic corporatism. But I'm not exactly sure, sorry, hindi ako familiar sa theory, how to distinguish the metrics for one thing or the other.
just a short
Bilis ako na pagsalita ako, no? Para maging shorter.
Hindi maging shorter, just less time, pero mahaba pa rin ang
Ako short lang.
Okay, go.
Semi-feudal. Hindi. Backward. Maliitan. You just look at the productive forces, di ba? Informal kasi niya sinimulan eh. Pero atrasado, yung kagamitan, yung teknolohiya, napakababa, etc. Pero gusto kong sabihin na as a mode of production, it is determined kung paano siya kinukubabawan ng imperialismo. O, di ba? Ganun ba kayo sa klase? Sana ganun na kayo sa klase, no? So the foreign control and foreign domination of these backward conditions and all its productive forces, it defines it as semi-feudal. Ngayon, tama, yung bureaucratic corporatism, I think that is what the kind of state that emanates from a semi-feudal, semi-colonial economy. Unless, of course, there's an explanation of that term. That the state is being run like a corporation. Pero tawag natin bureaucrat. capitalism. Yun, tatlong saligang suliranin. IBP.
Ibagsak.
Ibagsak!
Sige po. Ay, before we go to the next questions on the floor, may we request tubig? Tubig, please. Thank you. So, our first, right here. Thank you. Tubig pala ito. Tubig. Thank you. Okay. Yes, please.
Nasa likod.
Hello, ayan. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Sir Sunny, Ma'am Raspi. Hello po ulit. Ako po si Jomel Christian Lisa, undergraduate alumnus po ng Philippine Normal University. And every time po na umaattend po ng Birdtalk, lagi ko pong dinadala ay education sector. So ang tanong ko po sa inyo is, how must DepEd respond to the recently released 2022 PISA results wherein tayo po ay 6th lowest in reading, 6th lowest in math, at 3rd lowest in science in relation to the awareness of students on our political and economic situation and acquisition of skills. Kasi sinabi niyo na nga po, Ma'am Rosvino, na yung Pilipinas ay nagre-rely na kadalasan sa skills and services. Yun. Thank you po.
Salamat. How should DepEd respond? On confidential and intelligence.
Bawal ang intelligence. Confidential lang.
Sabi mo. Actually, naaral pa niya paano mag-respond. Sinasabi si Sir Vlad, ng ACT. Grabe yung result na yun, ano? And actually, dapat sila yung tanongin natin for response. Because mom sila dun sa result na yon. Ang isa pa naming na-discover is there is a 3-year decline in enrollment, in net enrollment. Matindi yun, 20 from, sorry, hindi ko masyado ano yung figure, pero 2 million every year since 2020, since we opened up again, 21, 22, 23. Diba? Sabihin, ay, kasi hindi dahil sa online classes na baliw. Hindi. This is really serious. Pero walang sinasabi. And mga bata yan, no? From basic to secondary. Ang laki ng decline ng enrollment. So, again, I would attribute yung ganung pagbaba rin ng competency doon mismo sa kahirapan ng mga bata na hindi na rin sila nakapag-aral. Tapos pagdating doon sa pag-aaral na napakaliit ng budget, di syempre hindi magkanda-ugaga yung teacher kung paano niya pagsasabay-sabayin din yung klase niya. Tapos ang isa kasing pwede pa nating i-highlight, when the teachers themselves took those exams, wag na lang. Naalala ko, taga-PNU ka pala eh. They also failed. So we have an education crisis. We should have more confidential and intelligence funds.
Nagturo si Sunny na si Sir Vlad.
Sir Vlad, help!
Help! Okay lang. May question later si Sir Vlad. Pero meron from the floor pa doon sa likod. Thank you.
Good afternoon, speakers. I'm Gerald Rendon from Department of Political Economy Department of Political Economy from Polytechnic University of the Philippines. So, as stated earlier specifically by Mr. Sani, the global economy are already being restrictive, and it is faulty to state that we should open and liberalize our economy. So, my question is that a sign that the world is slowly deglobalizing, or it's just a pace? And regardless, what could be our prospect for policy augmentation, or how can we thrive in this closing or restrictive economy? Yun lang po. Thank you po.
Yung deglobalizing, medyo tricky na term siya eh. Kasi may dalawang aspeto yung quote-unquote deglobalization. Ang malinaw, kung deglobalization in the sense na yung policies and practice ay inuurungan na yung masyadong pagbubukas sa nakarang 3 dekada, yes, nag-deglobalize na. So ano yan? Ang pinakatapok syempre, I think, yung ginagawa ng US, China, matagal na ginagawa. Pero US and Europe, in terms of industrial policy, completely taliwas siya doon sa pinupush na globalization the last 35-40 years. So sa policy aspect, definitely deglobalize. Yung second aspect, yung praktika. Nagiging, yun nga, our country starting to stand alone, di ba? Nagbumabalik na ba sa kanya-kanyang bansa yung produksyon? I think hindi. And I think maganda yung point na yun, kasi yung tanong na yun, kasi hindi na babalik sa panahon tulad ng maybe late 19th century, early 20th century, na maraming domestic-based production. Yung nakarang 3.5 dekada, nilatag talaga yung fancy term, global supply chain, regional supply chain, nilatag na iba't ibang phase ng production in such a way, imposible na siya ibalik. So I think in that sense, may konting pag-urong from yung masyadong pagbubukas, pero yung globalization in the sense na yung interlinkages ng mga bansa at mga kumpanya may iba't ibang mga bahagi ng produksyon nila, may part yan, lalo sa mga sensitive strategic industries, semiconductors maybe, of course in defense, malamang mag-ano yan, magko-concentrate sa mga industrial powers, pero yung latag in general, I think, may hangganan to paano urungan yon. As a country, how do we navigate that? Well, una, it's hard to say. You have to do it eh. At hindi lang actually isang NGO na maliit like IBON or even a government like the Philippines, actually yung mga economic actors, dapat, just do it. Kailangan sumabak eh. Kasi pag sumabak doon makita ng mga constraints, doon makita yung mga opportunities. Ang malinaw, yung pagbubukas is a dead end. Ang hindi masyado malinaw, yung hindi pagbukas ng basta-basta lamang, kundi to navigate the changing global environment, especially considering yung pagbagsak na manufacturing natin, yun, medyo not clear pa. But to get clarity on that, we have to just do it talaga. Then do it in a conscious way. Now, we're always learning from any mistakes which will be made. Definitely there will be mistakes. But also building on progressively dun sa aabot natin.
May dagdag. Rosby. Sige, sige. Okay, we have a next written question. But walang pangalan. So how can civil society organizations with different political orientations effectively do their role in easing the worsening social distress caused by economic slowdown and shrinking civil space?
What? I think we orient ourselves to one cause. Kasi with civil society organizations, so siyempre may kanya-kanya tayong mga NASH, di ba? May kanya-kanya tayong ginagawa. Okay? So meron dyan service, merong may education din, merong building political organization so they can have more action. Civil society kasi, at least in the Philippines, mataas yung kanyang, colorful yung history niya na lahat ng CSOs, action ang ending eh. Kahit yung mga service CSOs, no? In the end, they join mobilizations, they manifest yung kanilang pagiging part of a political movement. So, yung tanong kasi, paano effectively? Kahit iba't iba tayo ng orientation, iba't iba ng gawain, or maybe iba't iba pa nga ng mga reforms that we want to propose, paano natin ngayon effectively mai-ease, yun yung tanong, yung social distress. At kaya ang sagot ko, we increase our orientation. Tapos, doon sa NatSit paper namin, ang sinasabi natin is, we increase the kind of change that we fight for. At siguro naman doon sa haba ng discussion natin, the kind of change that we fight for, at yun din naman yung sinimulan ni Sir Carl kanina, is a radical change. Hindi na kasi talaga umuubra yung patse-patsing reforms eh. Yung reformer ka lang, eto within this bulok na system, I have a reform proposal. I think we kumbaga, disabuse natin yung sarili natin that from the belief that we will leave this world not changed as we found it, than we found it Hindi eh. Increase yung political orientation that we have to have a structural change. We have to have radical actions towards radical change. At yung sinasabi na, yung shrinking civic space, ikaw yan eh. Ikaw talaga yung tinitira eh. So there's no other way to fight it there's no other way to stop it or to arrest it than to fight it. So ganun sana, no, ka-radical yung ating 2024.
Sige. Next question we have from the floor.
Yeah, hello, good afternoon po. Iya Trinidad, the current student regent of the university. Hi.
Hello.
Just a quick trivia. Today is actually the commemoration of the third year of the unilateral abrogation of the UPD and the Accord. So it was abrogated in January 2021, and exactly today is the third year. So my question is, how does the effects of neoliberalism, the socioeconomic crisis, affect our right to education and academic freedom? Thank you.
I think orientationally ang problem hindi lang sa Philippines kundi globally. Yung education naging instrumental na lang to serve corporate interests eh. I think yung worst case dyan na mga nakausap ko, hindi ko nababanggitin yung foreign diplomat na nakausap ko, dinaglag niya sa sarili niyang bansa. Dinaglag niya kasi na-realize niya, ambassador to sabi niya, yung pag-aaral ng kanilang bata, pinag-isipan niya to, toddler pala anak niya, graduating through her country's school system, yung endpoint nun, pag-graduate ng college, to serve multinational corporations. Ako tuntua ako sa ganun kasi, anyway, ako siya laglag. Pero I think, yun ang main problem ng liberalism eh. Nung nakomodify lahat ng mga bagay, nung inorient na what's valuable are things that can be monetized, even yung pag-isip ng mga tao, shift towards providing that. Yung flip side nun, whether you call it yung pagkawala ng liberal arts or pag-decline ng humanities, ang nawawala doon yung context sa mga bagay-bagay. Naging instrumental ng edukasyon para kumita ka at yung pagkita na yun ay magmumula sa pagsaserbisyo sa kapital, whether in your own country or abroad. So yung nawala doon na yung social context ng orientation, I think doon papasok ang question ng academic freedom. Kasi anyone critical of that tendency to commodify yung education, to narrow yung scope of education, yung pagsakal sa academic freedom, ang sinasakal doon, hindi yung mga nag-support na gano'ng sistema. Ang academic freedom ng mga critical, ang iniipit. So I think very closely tied sila, and if you look at it in the broad scheme of things, I think yung pag-ipit ng academic freedom with one small step nga yung sa abrogation accord na yon, that's all in the frame of ensuring na yung educational system natin sa bansa serves capital, which I think is something that should be, opposed at all costs talaga. Kasi in the end, you could have a docile academe and a docile workforce, pero hindi yan ang paraan para umunlad yung lipunan.
Yung isang klase ng edukasyon that is really transformative, no? Which what society should have, no? A modern society uses its education as a sector to transform itself. Walang engot na society na yung kanyang education ay gagawin niyang para maging ignorant siya. So transformative education should be context-based education. And for 40 years, under the neoliberal policy, ang intention is to make the education system of the Philippines not context-based. Ano ba ang context dapat ng instruction at ng natututunan natin? Araling panlipunan. Because that's what we are here for, di ba? So, kung gusto mo ng transformative education, kung gusto mo ng pambansang industrialisasyon, buong education system mo works towards that. But since neoliberalism doesn't want that, saan gagawin niya? Yung edukasyon mo is not context-based. Reduce all contact time for araling panlipunan. Gawin nating hiwa-hiwala yung utak ng bata, fragmented sa kanyang kasaysayan. Ngayon, mag-aaral tayo ng kasaysayan ng pagdating ng hapon, next sem na kung paano natin sila nilabanan. So, ano siya, hiwa-hiwalay na mga kaalaman para pag-graduate mo, math, science, reading. Yun lang ang alam mo. Sabi nga kanina, hindi mo pa pala naipasa, no? Yung ganong competency. So, bulok na bulok siya. Ngayon, dun sa tanong niya, ni Iya, ano nito sa academic freedom? Kasi yung bata, pag natutunan niya yung konteksto niya, magiging critical siya. Nakikita niya yung konteksto niya eh. Pinahihirapan siya, mahirap siya, inaapi siya, siya ay sinasakop ng isang dayuhan, etc., etc. Pag ganun, lalaban siya, di ba? At yun yung ayaw ng neoliberalism.
And thank you so much po. I'd just like to follow up that there will be a short program and prop action today in the UP Diliman Oblation Grounds with regards to the third commemoration of the abrogation of UPD and the Accord. So we're inviting everyone here today. We see that we also have students from PUP and we share the exact same struggles on the education crisis that we face today. Thank you so much po.
Thank you too. Okay, now we'll go to a written question from Giba of Karapatan, asking for additional input on the current situation and moves of the military vis-a-vis economic political situation, U.S. support, military spending, etc.
Nag-data request si Giba. O go.
Short naman. Ano kaya to? I think pwede tayong magmula dun sa yung basic interest ng US is to support the Marcos administration. And one of the main levers ng political influence ng US sa Pilipinas is yung Philippine military. So I think coming from that perspective, I think maraming piece of the puzzle will fall into place. Kasi yung US knows na kung yung Duterte ang ascendant because of their China leaning, magkakaproblema. So solid yung support nila for Marcos. It also means they will do the most that they can na yung mga potential na malapit sa Dutertes in the military ay masasangga. So that's not to say na walang ganong klaseng maneuvers. Kaya ano ba usapin about yung kudita dati? It's because ano pa rin, player pa rin sa Philippine politics and military. But medyo overpowering right na influence ng US over their mga galamay in the military. In two ways na sinesecure ng administration yung support ng military with US backing is one, yung increase in US military aid. Actually, even sa last part ng Duterte administration, part siguro ng pagsisway ng US ng military support for its agenda, yung Philippines has always been the biggest recipient ng US military dito sa region. At even under Duterte, lumaki siya at malaki pa rin hanggang ngayon. So increasing yung US support for the Philippine military. Secondly, yung modernization program, umaarangkada na rin siya. At even, again, natawa nga ako, even yung unprogrammed appropriations, may I think 10 or 15 billion pesos din na nilagay doon for additional support dun sa AFP modernization. So I think yung paglabas na maraming pera niyon doesn't just help yung counter-insurgency agenda, doesn't just help yung counter-China agenda sa West Philippine Sea, that's also about currying yung support, ensuring yung support ng Philippine military for the status quo. Siguro yung pinaka-blip na lang doon na pwedeng baka isang factor kung bakit tinanggal si former Secretary Jokno, yung sa pension reforms. Kasi kung ipatupad yung pension reforms sa military, malaking kabawasan yon dun sa pensions ng mga existing, possibly, and definitely yung mga future pensioners ng armed services, uniform service, including the military. So, I think yung pagbagal ng proseso ng essentially pagbawas ng pension doon, might be connected to dun sa pagtanggal din actually kasi I'm sure maraming reasons yun, pero there's probably one thing din kasi kung pinush yung pension reforms na yun at binawasan yung kikitain ng mga current pensioners, worst case yun, pero at the very least yung mga biging pension in the future, bawasan ang kita nila, that can actually stoke dissent dun sa military against the administration. So I think the chain of command right now seems solid, especially because may US backing si si President Marcos. That's not to say it will change. Of course, manggagatong yung kabilang side, kaya nga naging mas visible si President Duterte. But I think how it actually will play out right now, think of more stable than not yung support ng military for the President. And I think they're confident enough dun sa kanilang sarili na even nung pinag-usapan yung peace talks, may mapitik na actually mga established yung tukol din eh. Kahit nag-full force sila dun sa pagpakita, nung lumabas anniversary statement, yung mga sinasabi, hindi kailangan kausapin yung mga yan kasi insincere sila. So may konting pag-assert, but I think right now, basically stable.
Okay, thank you.
So, more chismis. Kudeta. Hindi ko na babaguhin yon. Yun na yon.
Sige, magandang hapon. Mukhang ako yung huling magtatanong, Sunny. Rosby. Mukhang nabanggit na ni Sunny yung with regards to peace talks. No? So, maliban sa mainit na issue na walang sahod ang mga teacher at mga kawani na magbubukas ang klase ng ganito, ang isang malaking pinag-uusapan ay, of course, yung usapin ng peace talks o yung usapang pangipayan. Ang tanong ay, ano ang dahilan o perspective ng gobyernong Marcos ikil dito sa kabila ng sinasabi niya na wala ng active guerrilla front sa buong Pilipinas at yung kasunod na tanong, paano tayo makikinabang dito? Yun lang, maraming salamat.
Kung sa statements, apparently military establishments feels na may high ground sila ngayon. So feeling nila, nagmumula sila sa position of strength, kaya pwede pumasok sa peace negotiations. Ganun pa man, it remains to be seen kung ano ba talaga yung pinaka-core agenda nila. Clearly, hindi papayag ang military to a peace process. Sa tingin nila, malidehado sila. So maaga naman sinabi, hindi kayo papayag sa may mga preconditions like a ceasefire. Hindi kayo papayag na gamitin ng NDFP yung moment ng peace negotiations and any sort of good faith actions to regroup in the battlefield, yung mga ganyan. So, tinalagas nila early on yon. Having said that, of course, the fact na pumasok sa negotiations ng government, it means forced to be reckoned with pa rin yung revolutionary armed movement. And I think yung very careful na formulation nila, hindi pa to announcement ng peace talks, announcement to ng intent to end into peace talks. In a lot of ways, parang trial balloon din siya eh. Tinitingnan ko anong reaction ng public, anong reaction ng military forces, anong reaction ng mga even the revolutionary movement itself. And I think kung paano binabasa yung sitwasyon ngayon, may pushback ba hindi from the military? Right now, may konting pitik pero wala ng substantial pushback doon. On the part of the NDFP, looking by the same in the Communist Party, andun pa naman yung long-standing principled attitude nila sa pagpasok dun sa peace talk. So, I think right now, may very good ground pa rin na bumelo yon. Kasi, worst case, kung binato yung intent to enter into peace talk sa ere, tapos tuminding grumbling sa military, mag-iiba yung hugis ng proseso na yon. In the same way, nung binato yung intent to enter the process, bigla na lang may mga guerrilla fronts na nagsabi, hindi, ayaw namin na, gera gusto namin. Mag-iiba rin. But there were not that kind of adverse developments. So I think the ground is still there to push for the peace talks. Most important, I think, build a public constituency for the peace process. Not just abroad sa mga possible mediators or third parties, but lalo na sa Pilipinas, nabakiling civil society, I think yun ang first layer dapat of support ko natin. We have to build a public constituency in peace, hindi lang from mga dati ng public constituency. Sana even among the mga broader political orientation and then the broad public, sana mapabuelo natin. Syempre, because in the end, we want the just and lasting peace naman.
Rose, will you have to add anything?
Wala eh. Mahirap nga talaga siyang basahin kasi una sa isang banda, naalala ko kasi kanina yung sinabi na, uy, tumaas yung budget na binibigay sa assistance. Ano yun eh, it's practical eh for the administration. Nakikita niya yung brewing social unrest, bigay siyang budget. Tumaas nga pala ang budget sa agrikultura. Di ba? So this administration is like the father. Ang dami niyang impact projects. Yung pakitang ano. And as Sunny was speaking, I was thinking, this may be one of those, isang dating din para humupa kung ano man yung nagbrew na social unrest. On the other hand, magpapakitang tao din siya kung meron siyang ma-achieve na reforms out of this. Pero ang hindi kumaalis dun sa sinabi ni Sara Duterte, yung agreement with the devil. So sumagot agad si Sara na parang, ay, mali yan, ganyan-ganyan. Pero wala rin namang kumakampi kay, sa kanya, no? Sa kabilang banda, inisip ko, ano kaya yung reaction ng US, no, na itong administrasyon, and US is really totally, hindi siya pwede dyan. Kaya nagtitimbang pa rin tayo at nakikiramdam. Pero in the end, ganun talaga yun. We have to talk about the changes that we want to happen. Kahit anong mesa yan. Kasi nga, we want to have that just and lasting peace. So kung ganun, tuloy pa rin kung paano natin idinideal ang isang sagad-sarin na administrasyon na may pagpapanggap.
Thank you. Thank you. So that was our last question. So now I just wanted to open up to parting shots from our resource speakers. Parting shots.
Ako muna. Ayun na, lagi naman nating sinasabi na, ito kasing pagtitipon natin semestrally ito no? Pero nakikita ko yung mga ibang nandito, marami sa inyo, ang dami na ring pinupuntahan ng mga pagkilos at pagtitipon. So, lagi naman natin sinasabi, yay, meron na naman tayong isang panahon that we sat with a perspective na ito yung kalagayan, and then we're challenged all the time to increase our response. And I've already said it earlier that I hope the response will be really on the level of a radical response and radical change. So, ganun yun. Hindi yung lalaro-laro tayo sa sitwasyon, yung ganun. Kundi, mas on the ground, na type of mobilization and organizing, mas in the flesh na klase rin no, ng pagpapamulat, pagkilos, at pagmamobilisa. Yun lang, salamat.
Thank you. Sunny.
Nakadepress din talaga yung economic political situation, pero yung always source of hope naman I think ng IBON at natin lahat is may magagawa naman tayo para itulak yon. Siguro pinaka-parting shot ko is huwag ma-depress sa ganitong klase mga input ng IBON para maunawaan yung problema yan. Of course, malayong tanaw natin sa klase ng pagbabago na gusto natin, pero in the end, yung baka punta tayo sa gusto nating pagbabago na yan dun sa sariling pagkilos natin. And I think the same way, malayong tanong natin dapat forward, encourage natin ang pinakamaraming tao na isama natin sa laban na ito. Doon manggagaling yung buwelo natin, doon manggagaling yung mga bagong mukha, doon manggagaling yung mga bagong ideya kung paano isulong actually yung pagbabago. And I think yung pagbe-break ng inertia ng marami ngayon, lalo na among demobilized na civil society, I think this is the moment, let's rally our forces with a long view, sumulong tayo.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you again, Rose B. and Sunny, for your inputs and for your response to our audience questions. So don't get up just yet. I have many, many announcements. We'll be here for another hour. Just kidding. Bear with me. I'll keep pointing up here. So our first announcement, the 2022 IBON Araling Panlipunan books and the 2023 Social Studies books for grades 7 to 10 are available. And also available right now is the Transport Crisis series affordably on. Okay, the Transport Crisis series is available online and at the IBON Bookshop. Tapos, also available soon, watch out for the release of IBON's new edition of books for Araling Panlipunan 2024 edition. For orders and inquiries, you may approach our book stand by the entrance or contact the IBON Bookshop online and or visit the IBON Bookshop at 114 Timog Avenue, Quezon City. I had to point over here. I'm just kidding. By the way, our products are also available on Shopee and Lazada. And You can hear more from Sir Vlad at this upcoming event, the People's Education Summit, brought to you by the People's Education Commission, will be held on January 27, 2024 from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Mary Hill School of Theology in New Manila, Quezon City. The summit will discuss various organization studies and policy recommendations pertaining to the education sector. So look forward to that. If you're interested, please contact IBON. Also, those interested can join the Educators Forum for Development, a voluntary association of educators committed to social transformation. Registration forms are available at the registration table, so please submit for filled up forms to the IBON staff. And last, please visit our website, www.ibon.org. Follow, like us, and subscribe to our various social media accounts on Twitter or X, Facebook, or YouTube. Last, I believe we have feedback forms. Is that so? I believe this was given to you during registration. So please kindly fill those out, and then my drop box near the registration table that you can put those in. So again, IBON Foundation would like to thank Altermidya, All UP Academic Employees Union, and the Office of the Faculty Regent. Special thanks. Special thanks again to the Institute of Biology and its staff. And thank you to our cross-posting partners, and of course to all our participants here and online. So hope to see you again at our next Bird Talk, and we have refreshments available in the lobby. Enjoy. Thank you.
Despite the slower
You may
inflation,
come up for autographs and pictures with Rosie and Sunny.
Due to the government's PUV modernization program.
Government explores the resumption of peace talks with communist.
The 125 million peso confidential fund was spent in 11 days.
Baka may libel dito. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Matapin mga bisita natin. Thank you. Matapin.